Tonight's episode of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show is brought to you by Kid Products, stick stoves and reflector ovens proudly made in Canada. Algonquin Outfitters, with 5 key locations in and around Algonquin Park to serve your backcountry needs. Salis Marine, keeping you safe on the water since 1999. Ostrom Outdoors, custom fit canoe packs and barrel harnesses. And Novacraft Canoes, connecting you with nature in Canadian-made canoes since 1970. Well, happy Tuesday evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show, a show that's going to bring you a lot closer to the great outdoors. My name is Dennis, also known as CANOEHOUND, and if this is your first time tuning in or your first time listening as a podcast, welcome to the show. Feel free to check us out and subscribe on YouTube for upcoming shows and information pertaining to the show. We have a lot planned for tonight, and just going to give everybody a bit of forewarning, but the intro tonight, or our little intro segment here, is going to be a little longer than normal. But I promise you, we're going to get on to a great winter camping episode. We have some great people in the green room here just itching to come up here and share all kinds of tips, information, and things that are going to keep you warm, fuzzy, and cozy there in the winter camping environment. So make sure you stick around for that. We also do have a giveaway that we're going to be doing tonight, so you'll want to stick around until after the 8 o'clock hour to make sure you do not miss out on that. In the meantime, we're just going to start out here with a few announcements, and you're going to see there's a little bit that we got to cover here. Last week, if you happen to miss a show, we had members of the Invading Species Awareness Program and the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters on the show, and we were talking and learning a bit more about invasive species and the harm that they do cause our environment, and what we can do as backcountry aficionados to help prevent the spread in our forests, lakes, and rivers. If you happen to miss that show, please do go back. It was a very interesting show, well worth the watch. And you know what? You're going to get a whole bunch of information on that, or in that show, that you might not even know that you have invasive species right in your own backyard, because they're so prevalent. So by all means, get back and please do check out that show in our past episodes playlist, or also available as a podcast on YouTube Music. Last week, I mentioned that Motorola has come out with a new GPS satellite device, something for communication in the backcountries, your SOS beacons. And I'm really excited to say that I am probably one of the first in Canada to get one of these devices. This thing is like super, super small. It does all the same things that your Garmin's and your Spot devices and your Zolios do, but at a fraction of the size. Like, this thing is like the thickness of like 4 quarters put together, very light, and it's got really neat features in the fact that, well, not so much features, but it does all the same things as those other devices, with the exception of GPS mapping. The neat thing about these is their price point, and also the other thing is that when you purchase one of these, your first year subscription comes included with it, and they are like dirt cheap as far as I'm concerned on the market. Now, I'm not going to drop any prices, but let's just say that tomorrow or the day after, I'll be posting on my Facebook page a special offer that you can actually get one of these for well under $200, including your first year subscription. So that's all I can say right now, but these officially launched about a week and a half, well, on November the 20th. So they're fresh out on the market, and by all means, you should check them out. I have a link in the description below where you can actually check it out. It's called the Motorola Defy. Look it up online, and you might be pleasantly surprised. I'm not sponsored to say that either, by all means. I'm just sharing something that I come across these things at a show recently, and I was ultra impressed. I just want to see if the performance is there as well. So that's that for that. Anyways, check them out, the Motorola Defy. I'd like to welcome a new channel member, Bill from Thunderbox Diaries. Thank you very much for your support of the channel. It's greatly appreciated. And we do have a number of channel members that are actually celebrating milestones, and I'm talking some really good ones. Let's see here. At the 6-month milestone, we have Hemlocks and Loons, Dwayne Burkhart, Oregon Dave McDonald, Robert McDonald, Mustang 774, and Trish Harrison, all celebrating 6 months. Jen Niles is celebrating 1 year as a member. Dan Gibbs and Michael Schertzberg are both celebrating 2 years. And Citizen Ulanti celebrating 3 years. You know what? Thank you very much. I feel all warm and fuzzy inside for the support that you all show this channel. And that's why I'm recognizing what you do. For those of you whose addresses I already have, your membership stickers to go on your membership badges here, these guys are in the mail. For those of you that I don't have your address, and if you've never received one of these as a channel member, drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com, and I'll make sure I get that open to the mail for you. But I do need your address for that. So with that being said, I'm just going to get all my channel members floating across the bottom of the screen here and have all you recognized. I also want to thank all my Buy Me a Coffee peeps. We got Beauty of the Backcountry, Riley Outside, Steve Bentley, Steve from Suluk 46, who we're working on to have as a guest on the show here to talk about this really cool, epic pack rafting adventure he's showing right now on YouTube. Go out and check that out for sure. But thank you for your coffee gifts and contributions. A couple of you actually helped out in buying a new microphone for the show here, because I don't know if anybody noticed over the last couple episodes, I've had some real funky things going on with the microphone, tones changing and pitches, and I'm hoping that this is okay. So if everybody's hearing me okay, put a number 1 in the chat just to reaffirm that you can hear me okay and I'm not just running lips or nothing. Anyways, let's take a dip, everybody. Very cool. This week we have a lot of milestones as far as happiness is concerned. Like to wish a happy anniversary to Sean and Tracy Rowley, our good friends over at Sean from Paddling Adventures Radio, and his wife, who's his better half, and also to Canoe and Desamarie Torpa. They're also celebrating an anniversary. Happy birthday to Peter Desmet, Stephen Coots, who have both been past guests on the show. And then, you know what? We have a very special birthday wish for those of you that might be on social media. We have a regular on the show, a good friend of ours, and a very good friend of mine nowadays. Good old Kevin Callan here is celebrating his 60th birthday. Happy birthday, man.
Cheers. How you doing?
Yeah, Kevin's a little under the weather today, if you haven't kind of figured things out here. He was to be a guest on the show tonight to talk about winter camping, but I think we'd rather nurse him back to health because he has a couple of big commitments coming up this weekend. So, dude, how you feeling?
I'm better. I was on Saturday, Sunday. Monday actually was my worst day. So I have COVID, and I'm pretty sure I got it from my students on Wednesday, and never had it. Don't know why I didn't get it yet. But anyway, yeah, it's not good. So hope you don't get it. So cheers. I'm having a bit of tea.
There you go. No whiskey. My friend, we'll pretend this is a dram. Cheers to you. Happy birthday to you.
60th and just starting life now.
Cool. Well, you know what? With you just starting life now, we have a special guest here in the basement that we've arranged to perform a song for you for your birthday. 60 is a rather big milestone. If everybody would like to please welcome Jerry Vanderveer to the panel. How you doing, Jerry?
Hey, I'm doing great. Happy birthday, my friend. Yeah. Yeah. So just thought since you can't talk, I'll take a couple of minutes and sing for you. I know you're a big John Denver fan. I know this is your 50th birthday, and even though the song isn't always politically correct all the time, we're going to sing this just for you, Kevin. Well, I've been lately thinking about my life's time and all the things I've done and how it's been. I can't help believing in my own mind. I know I'm gonna hate to see it end. seen a lot of sunshine, slept out in the rain, spent a night or two all on my own. I've known my lady's pleasures, had myself some friends, and spent a time or two in my own home. I have to say it now, it's been a good life all in all. It's really fine to have a chance to hang around and lie there by the fire, watch the evening tide, while all my friends and my old lady sitting past the pipe around. Talk of poems and prayers and promises and things that we believe in. How sweet it is to love someone, how right it is to care. How long it's been since yesterday, and what about tomorrow? What about our dreams and all the memories we share? The days they pass so quickly now, the nights are seldom long. Time around me whispers when it's cold. The changes somehow frighten me, still I have to smile. It turns me on to think you're growing old. For though my life's been good to me, there's still so much to do. So many things my mind has never known. I'd like to raise a family, I'd like to sail away and dance across the mountains on the moon. I have to say it now, it's been a good life all in all. It's really fine to have a chance to hang around and lie there by the fire and watch the evening tide, while all my friends and my old lady sitting past the pipe around. Talk of poems and prayers and promises and things that we believe in. How sweet it is to love someone, how right it is to care. How long it's been since yesterday, and what about tomorrow? And what about our dreams and all the memories we share? Happy birthday, my friend.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that song.
More poems and prayers and promises for you in the future. At least another 60 years of them.
At least.
Wow, incredible! Thanks, Jerry. That's
My
awesome.
pleasure.
Kevin, what's the significance of that song? Why do you like that song so much?
The lyrics are, well, first of all, the lyrics are very calming, but also it does show about progression, about also memories. I mean, when you have your birthday, Justine from Cackle TV told me this years ago. I remember on the Spey River with her, world-renowned filmmaker and kayaker, and she turned 40. So I went up to her on film and I said, "Hey, it's your 40th this morning. So what were your greatest memories?" She looked at me angry and she goes, "Why would you do that? Why would you spend your life thinking about the past instead of the future?" So what did she do today? She sent me a note. Think about the time that we were on the Spey and the time between that time and now, the future that you had during those times. So she goes, remember, tomorrow you start another chapter.
Awesome. And the lyrics of that song are very strong, including the old lady part, Jerry. But
and the pass of the pipe.
Well, he got banned from radio because of the marijuana thing, to pass the pipe. And also they used to say old lady. I mean, first of all, Christine's younger than me, so she's not my old lady. But yeah, it's just different times, but the same meaning, right? Jerry, right?
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Kevin, happy birthday to you. Jerry, thanks very much. It's been a long time coming. I haven't seen you in quite a
my
while.
pleasure. It's good to be back here with like-minded vagabonds. That's
we're gonna have to do a music night one night.
Let's do it. I'll bring Kate over, and we'll definitely have a great time.
That'd be cool.
Sounds awesome.
Cool.
Thank you very much, my friend. Very
friend,
much appreciated.
You're very welcome. I'm honored to do so.
And you're almost as good looking as John was.
Such a compliment.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night. We're going to get on with our winter camp discussion.
Happy winter, everybody. Have a good night. Sorry I couldn't help out.
Jerry, if you want to pop back in later for the green room, you're more than welcome.
Okay, will do, buddy. Thanks.
I'm going to bed.
I don't blame you.
Get yourself better, Kevin. Thanks. Later, Kev. All right. Well, you know what? I bet you didn't know you were going to be watching a winter camping episode and see a short little concert here by none other than Jerry Vanderveer, very talented music writer, national music writer, and performer and recording artist as well. So that's really cool in my books. Anytime Jerry can be on the show. Anyways, tonight we got a very interesting show for you here. It's another one of these learn about shows. It's our 5th annual winter camping episode. Tonight we're joined by several backcountry winter campers who will share tips, ideas, information about winter camping that will help keep you warm and comfortable in the backcountry and make you enjoy winter again. You know what? The more you get out there, the more you're going to enjoy winter camping. We got some great people here in the basement. They've all been on the show before, and we're going to introduce them now. First person we're going to bring up on panel. She's been on the show numerous times. She's the writer of the online course on Udemy of how to winter camp. And she's an experienced tripper and backcountry adventurer herself. First, we have camper Christina. Hey.
Hey.
How you doing? And before we bring the other guests up, I believe you had mentioned that you're only here for a limited time tonight.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a day surgery this morning, so I'm not really at my best. I set my alarm to wake up to come and do the show, but I didn't want to miss it because I love the winter camping shows. So just wanted to come on for a bit and say hi and talk about some winter stuff. So
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Next on panel here, and I'm looking in the basement. We're missing a couple of people. Anyways, we'll bring up Mr. Nate Muskoka. We haven't seen Nate on the show too much this year. How you doing, Nate? You're on mute.
Oh,
Still
there,
on mute.
there we go.
There you go. How you been?
Tired, but doing well. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, a little bit of. Oh, yeah. Well, you're a new papa, so that'll keep you tired. But you got a little bit of snow up there in Muskoka right now. Up Huntsville
Yeah, we
way?
do. It started snowing Sunday night, and it just kind of kept going a little bit by little bit. Hopefully, we're in for more tonight, and it looks like more tomorrow.
Awesome. Very good. Next person we're going to pop up here on panel, another regular on the show, is good old Pine Martin. How you doing, Martin?
Very well. That was lucky. I just lost my wife.
See, now he's in the same snow belt as you, so maybe he's
Need
having
Starlink.
difficulty. Yes. If you pop out and pop back in, that's cool. That's all good. Last person we're going to bring up here on panel from Now Outdoors. He is like an instructor. He's also an expedition leader when it comes to outdoor camping adventures, both winter, summer, spring, and fall. Please welcome to the live stream. We have Nick Gordon. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, good to be here.
Yay, good stuff. So, you know what? We were supposed to have, like I say, Kevin was supposed to be on the show and it would have fulfilled our panel of 6. But we have 5 very, very, very capable people here that they know their stuff because, well, they get out there and they freeze. So that's the all important thing is to get out there and freeze comfortably. So I figured tonight we would get the show going by kind of trying to maybe break things up into segments, as we have done with the past 4 episodes. And somebody had asked earlier, well, what if we touch on stuff that we've covered in past shows? And I say, you know what? All the information that we get out there tonight, whether we've covered it before or never covered it, is going to be useful information, especially for people that have never seen the show before. So I figured we would break it up into a little bit of gear talk, clothing, get into maybe some shelters, maybe foods that are very enticing for the backcountry that are going to build a lot of calories. Surviving the cold, how to keep warm, and where to winter camp. If you're in the backcountry, where would you find a suitable camping spot? You're not going to do it in the middle of a lake. You're going to try and find something on land, but we'll get to that when we get there. But I guess the first question is, and we'll start with Christina on this, is why winter camp?
Why not? Why not? Camping is something I love to do, and I don't really actually like the cold. A lot of people know that about me, but I love camping, and I love camping more than I hate the cold, I guess. So, and now there's so many ways to camp and be comfortable and be warm. So why not? Being out in the winter is great. There's less people out. It's super quiet. It's really peaceful. I love that you can see animal tracks. It's just a totally different experience, and but just as enjoyable. And I love being out there, especially in the winter, because it's just so quiet and peaceful.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Nate? I know you're following you on Instagram. You do everything from like just little short day outings to go have a coffee in the bush in the middle of the snow, right up to like a couple days, right down to a killer expedition that you did last year with guys like Jim Baird and the Budnick brothers. So what's your take on winter camping? Why do you enjoy it so much?
I think Christina touched on it. It's really nice and quiet out there, and there's a number of other great parts about winter camping. There's no bugs, obviously, and there's just it's a whole other sort of world of the outdoors to explore. I mean, spotting tracks in the snow is always a blast in the winter, and much harder to do in any other time of year unless you're camped on the beach, right? There's a totally different set of vistas because of the lack of foliage. There's different wildlife, and yeah, it's like someone flipped a switch and you're in a bit of a different universe that's all your own, and there's also far less people around as well, right? So anywhere where you'd go in the summer and you may find it a little noisy or a little busy, winter is usually the opposite. So
yeah, and why not, right? It's something to do in the wintertime. I remember years ago I used to ski, and that was always my enjoyable thing to do in the wintertime. So it made winter more bearable by having an activity to do outdoors, right? And then as time goes along, then I kind of stopped skiing because it's hard for me to get to a ski resort here, there, the other thing, especially on weekends. And I started hating winter again because I didn't really have much to do, right? I didn't have a day camp, and I could go play in the snow in the backyard, but I didn't even have grandkids at that time. And now that I've taken up winter camping, it gives me something to look forward to when the winter comes again, right? Because we're now getting into hard water instead of the soft water, and we get out there, and it gives us something to do. And you're working when you're out there. So Martin, same thing for you. What's the allure for you?
Well, just the beauty of winter. Winter is different. It looks completely different. And a lot of people imagine that it's just going to be sort of, pure whiteness and bare trees and stuff like that. And it's true, but bare whiteness or bare trees and pure whiteness is fantastic. Those are the vistas that Nate was talking about, but it's hard to overstate how beautiful that is. And there's another thing that I really like about it, and that's where you can go, right? You mentioned that the water is no longer soft, it's hard, which means you can walk on it, you can ski across it and snowshoe on it and so forth. But that means that it affords you all kinds of possibilities for travel, places that you can go that you simply couldn't go before. It would be too hard, like there are swamps to be crossed and marshes. There are areas to be explored that you normally would just be inaccessible, or they would just be too unpleasant. And travel is surprisingly easy. If you have a sled, or, a freight toboggan or something like that, and good snowshoes and good flotation, you can carry an impressive amount of gear over lakes for long distances. So it's fantastic. You get to go places and see sights that you wouldn't get to see at any other time of year.
Mm-hmm. Now, Nick, for you, somebody like yourself, having a business now outdoors, your take may be a little different. Like I'm sure a lot of the reason why you do it is a lot of the same reasons that the other three panelists have spoke of. But for you being a business, you have a little bit of a different take on it because you're actually leading expeditions and sort of tours and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I gotta say, what everybody else said really, is spot on. Some of the things, just to reiterate, I love the quiet of winter when you're out there, especially deep snow. I love that you can travel so many more places. You can see more as well. You don't have, at least down by us, we don't have all the foliage and all the trees, so you can see a lot farther. But I get to meet, some of the coolest people are winter campers, and it's just it's a different crowd. I've got two really large events that I do. One's coming up. I've got an educational winter workshop event coming up, and I have this frozen butt hang, which over the years has gotten pretty big. We have people from all over the country now that come to Wisconsin to camp out in a hammock, and the conversation is a lot different in that crowd because it's typically more advanced winter campers. They've got the gear, they've got their stuff. A lot, there's maybe some DIY, whatever, but the conversation isn't so much gear talk because everybody sort of has their own system and they're all really well prepared. So it's kind of a neat, just a neat on that side of things. But yeah, when I'm taking people out, a lot of my trips are geared for beginners. This workshop coming up, for example, I got people that are going to come out there with their summer tents. They're going to double up their bags. They're going to do whatever they can to make it work with what they got. And we're going to try to, educate them and hopefully get them out more in the wintertime. So, I've actually shared the link for this show tonight with my college students. They're prepping for their winter camping trip. I've shared it with people sign up for our upcoming trips because it's, there's a wealth of knowledge in this panel here. And, it's really, for me, it's trying to introduce this whole other season to people a lot of times for the first time, and just to get them out there and not be so intimidated by the price or the gear or the cold, or just to get them out there.
Right. And you know what? Thanks for the great segue, because that'll be the first thing I wouldn't mind talking about is gear for winter camping. A lot of people might not know, but a lot of gear is actually very specialized, right? Yeah, here comes the alpaca hat. A lot of gear for wintertime is very specialized, but it's not to say that your summer camping gear in some cases can't serve double duty to be used during winter camping. For instance, stoves. Let's talk a little bit about some of the gear that you can carry from summer into winter, and then we'll get into maybe a little bit of specialized gear that is pretty much, your sleeping bags, the sleeping systems, and maybe some tents and stuff like that. So what are some common items, and anybody could pipe in on this one, but what are some common items that you can utilize from your summer camping into your, year round, basically? Who wants to take that one?
I would say all of them. I mean, depending on how you're camping, if you're going to camp in a car campground with hydro, bring a space heater. You can use a summer tent. You can use your summer bags, maybe bring a couple extra blankets. A lot of that gear can be used all year round if you use it properly, or add layers or add some things to make it work. I have a lot of that cheater kind of stuff in my winter camping course because, you don't want to go out and spend a whole bunch of money just to try something. So, go to somewhere that has hydro, bring a space heater, bring extra blankets and give it a shot. And then you can kind of build your gear up from there if you want to keep going. So I
kind of chuckle about that one there. And the chuckle is when a good friend of mine, one of my regular canoe partners, we were going to New Lake. We were just going there camping. I think it was 2 years ago. And poor Jay, right? Like he doesn't have all the winter gear. He's got all the summer gear, fine, right? But we told him, we said, well, you know what? We're gonna have the wood stove going. It's gonna be nice and warm in the tent. Not even thinking about nighttime. And the poor guy brought 2 sleeping bags, but not enough. And here we are, we got room in the truck for all kinds of gear. He could have brought like a mountain of blankets to cover himself with, and we didn't even think to tell him to bring bring a couple extra wool blankets or whatever. And the poor guy froze. Like we felt bad for him, eh? So we stayed up all night just stoking the fire so Jay could sleep at nighttime, right? So But yeah, Christina brings up a point. If you're doing front country camping, then you know what? Don't be afraid to bring the gear if you got the space for it, right? Yeah.
I've had people years ago. I had somebody that wanted to try hammock camping, and this was before I had insulated hammocks from Superior Gear that I rent out for shelters. And their plan was they called me up and said, "Hey, I want to try this thing. I don't have quilts. What can I make it work?" I said, "Well, yeah, you can probably squirrel pile yourself in there. Bring all of your down stuff and bring some extra wool blankets and some reflectics." And they made it work. And that particular night got about, I don't know, it was about 20 below Fahrenheit. So it was really chilly. They were just fine. And they woke up and they couldn't believe they had survived. And with really no extra gear, just a lot of layers. For years, I winter camped with a bag that was not rated for sub-zero temps. I'd wear 4 or 5 layers of fleece and whatever else I could put on, and just made it work until I knew what I wanted to buy and made the investment in some different gear. So it's all doable.
Sure. So if you have the summer gear that you can carry over in the winter, and as a beginner, maybe you want to start investing in some proper winter camping gear, Martin, where would you suggest people start? Oh,
Sorry.
still on mute there.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. I think, okay, well, the 2 most important things are your clothing and I think your sleep system. It doesn't really matter what kind of tent you have. You can get a 4-season tent, specialized for winter, or just use your crappy summer tent. There's not going to be a huge difference. There will be differences. A 4-season tent will vent off moisture a lot better, and it'll offer a little bit of an increase in temperature inside, but not much. Basically, if you're cold tenting, the temperature inside and outside are pretty close to the same. So it all comes down to what you're wearing and what you're wearing at night, which is your sleep system. So that is the most important thing. Right? Invest as much as you can in your sleep system if you can afford to. But it's hard. I have a -40 down sleeping bag, but it costs $1,000, right? And it took me a long time to get up to that, and it's only because I started sleeping in a hot tent, and I sleep cold at night. I don't keep the stove going at night. And so I needed something like that. But before that, I slept in snow shelters, which are much warmer than people imagine. And I never had anything better than a 3-season bag and maybe another summer bag around it, right? And some wool blankets and things like that. So really it's about having lots of insulation underneath you and a good sleep system around you, right? So that would be the biggest thing. And the other thing is clothing. You want lots of layers. You want to wear them loosely so that they breathe. Anything that's tight and constricted around you will just cause you to sweat and will not trap warm air around you. So you want to wear lots of layers that you can shed and put on and off as needed. And you want them to be nice and loose and baggy, and preferably breathable fabrics, like something like wool. I wear a lot of wool. In fact, when I go winter camping, I pretty much wear only wool, except rain gear. In case of rain, I bring rain gear, but just about everything else is wool.
What about a merino wool base layer? Should that be, and this might be a good question for Nate, because he used to be in the retail environment for all kinds of camping stuff, but your base layer of merino wool, or perhaps maybe like a polyester base layer, should that be snug to your skin, or should that be loose fitting? Because every one I've ever bought, I buy an extra large, and I'll tell, I swear it was a small. It just fits you that snug, right?
Yeah, some of it comes down to personal preference, and some of it comes down to what you're actually going to be using it for, because a lot of it's sold with the intent of exporting moisture away from your body, which polyester does quite well, wicks moisture away. That's the entire premise of the Under Armour brand when it started was exporting moisture away from your body in polyester base layers, and somehow magically in the sports world, after a long time in the outdoors world, caught fire and made sense to everybody. Before that, in the outdoors world, there was a company for a long time that's still around, just under a different name, called Leafa. And if you're of a certain age, you definitely remember Leafa, because they made really heavy, sort of tighter fitting polyester base layers that worked very well to wick moisture away from you and stank horribly. which is the drawback of synthetic fibers like polyester, as well as lacking an inherent thermal value like merino wool. Merino wool is now widely available just about everywhere you look, including Costco. It's a wonderful natural fiber made out of wool fibers from merino sheep, usually in New Zealand. And it comes in a variety of different grades, and there's always a variety of content levels in the garment you're looking at, which again depends on usually where you're looking at it, such as Costco, everywhere, to MEC, to Algonquin Outfitters, are going to sell brands with varying content levels of merino wool. The higher the content, the more effective it's going to be for the reasons that you're buying it for, which is usually inherent warmth and moisture wicking ability. If there's one thing you're going to invest in for getting outside this winter, whether it's winter camping or for snowshoeing or for Nordic skiing or whatever, it should be a good merino base layer set. And if you hunt hard enough and know what you're looking for, you can find fantastic deals on stuff like icebreaker. Now and then you'll find it at Winners. Now and then you'll find it at secondhand stores. Like I found a beautiful quarter zip 260 weight icebreaker top at a secondhand store for $20, and it was almost brand new. So it's out there. It's worth sort of searching out the good stuff, because not only will the merino content be higher, the grade of the fiber of merino is finer, softer, more pliable, and usually the denier of the fabric is more tightly woven together, meaning that it's going to last longer, especially in the higher wear areas, usually like your collar, your elbows, etc.
Yeah, and the neat thing about merino wool, it may be expensive, but it's well worth the investment. And it's not only for wintertime. You could actually use merino wool in the summertime. And I find, I've used merino wool on canoe trips just to wick that moisture away. You know what I mean? It's not always, especially the tight fitting stuff, because it fits tight to your body and the wind still passes through, but the moisture wicking ability is just second to none, really.
Yeah, if you're buying it a little bit more for warmth and less for the moisture wicking performance, such as with like a highly aerobic activity, then go a size up for sure. It's going to be tough to find the merino wool quote unquote base layer that hangs off you extremely loosely unless you're Martin size, because
is that a poke?
they're just meant to fit closer to your body, because they're made usually more for the moisture wicking performance. So
sure, very totally understandable. I'm gonna field a few questions throughout the show. I've been trying to keep questions of late to the second half of the show, but I think with this show, I want to give people what they want to, the information that they want to learn, right? So as we go along, I'm going to field a few questions. There was one earlier from Becca Easley asking, as a beginner looking at the forecast, how do I evaluate the temperature to determine if I can handle the weather? Anybody?
Backyard. Yeah, backyard. Always try everything out first in your backyard or somewhere safe where you have a way out, or you have a backup plan, so that if you're not able to do it or whatever, or you're not comfortable, then you have an easy way or a safe way to get out of doing it. But you should always test everything first somewhere safe.
And that's always the case. If you're a beginner, you should always try it at home first, because like Christina said, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're absolutely frozen, you're just walking into your back door. You know what I mean? If you're going out to even a place like, let's say, Killarney or Mew Lake, and doing what's considered front country camping as winter camping. Last year we hit almost minus 40 at Mew Lake, and that was bitter. Even with the good equipment, it didn't matter how good your stuff was. You're still catching a chill at some point or other, right, Nate?
Yeah, I was just going to say quickly, sometimes it's good to think about the coldest temperature you've ever camped at that's not in the winter and how comfortable you were at that point, and then make a logical jump forward. So you don't necessarily want to go from, a Labor Day weekend camping where once it got down to -2 and you were a little uncomfortable, and jump right into a -30 weekend. Take it in steps and make it logical for the steps you would take to be warmer than you were at your coldest, summer or late season or early season camping venture.
I think I saw Becca said she doesn't have a backyard that she's able to camp in. So I would suggest somebody else's backyard is probably just as good. So if you got some friends, family, and you don't, you don't need much. Like Pine Martin was saying before, clothing and sleep system. So just throw on your base layers. If you got a friend that wants to do a little backyard barbecue for New Year's or something, go hang out there and sleep in the back or hang out by the fire, and you should be able to spend hours outside and not feel that cold. And then as far as your sleep system, just take what you have and add more layers to it. We can touch base as well. I know you're signed up for my upcoming event, backyard is the best. Just try to get your stuff set up locally. A lot of times I've had people, I've had a lot of college students that will rent gear like the day before a trip. They don't check if the tent poles are with their tent. They don't, they buy some new gear, some new, footwear too. Actually, I'll get text messages with photographs. They'll say, hey, I'm at, whatever store. Are these the boots I need? They just sold them to me for $200. I'm like, no, those are shoes. You need boots. And so it's good to just really try to get your stuff sorted a little bit ahead of time and just try to get a night out there through it, try it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on a trip is not a place to be testing your gear. If you're going out winter camping, and you've bought new gear, try it out at home before you take it out. Being out in the field and not realizing how, if you've never set up your tent before, to get out there and perhaps you're in like sub-zero temperatures, that might not be the time to be learning how to set up your tent for the very first time, right? You want to test this stuff out at home. It could even be as a hiking trip in your area, out for an afternoon, in your backyard, set up a tent, sitting around a campfire with friends, throw your sleeping bag over top of you. Is it going to be warm enough? Is it keeping you nice and toasty? These are all things that should be done well before you head on out to the field for sure. Yes.
I got a couple of other thoughts, if I may.
Yeah.
Well, with respect to backyard camping, actually, I'll answer the question a little bit more directly. With respect to sort of looking at the weather, one thing to keep in mind is that it's actually more comfortable later in the winter, right? It gets progressively colder as the winter wears on until you get to spring, of course. But the first half of winter tends to be very damp, right? In most parts of North America, winter is damper at the start of the winter. And by the time you get to sort of late January and into February, it's a much drier cold, right? And it's the ambient moisture, right? That moisture in the air that really gets into you, right? So if you can go later in the season, you will probably find it better. And I've noticed this. A lot of people, they'll go camping, early in winter and they find it really tough and, kind of cold. And they try it again later, and not much has changed in their gear and they find it a lot better. But that's because it is just, unless it is, a huge difference in temperature and it's much colder later on, you're going to notice that the air is drier and you're going to stay dry. Like moisture just doesn't get into your tent, doesn't get into your sleeping bag, doesn't get into your clothes as much. And so it's a drier cold, and a drier cold is a warmer cold than a wet cold.
Yeah, just like the fall weather, right? The cold, damp rain. This goes through your bones, right?
Yeah. Well, right now is the time I hate winter camping the most. This is the time of camping I am least inclined to camp in. This season right now, these shoulder seasons, it's really hard. First of all, you don't know what to wear. It's, whatever you choose, it's wrong because the weather's going to change on you. And so you end up having to bring a lot more clothes than you might otherwise. And it's just so damp and there's just no getting away from it, right? So I try not to camp when the temperatures are hovering close to the freezing point. I like it to get way below the freezing point, right? Minus 10 to minus 20 is kind of optimal. And it's paradoxical, it's counterintuitive, but it is in fact a much easier way to camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
That's a good point. This past week last year, I was actually camping with Mike Morton and a friend, and we knew it was going to be sort of that weird temperature range where at night it's -4 and during the day it's +2, and there's some snow on the ground, and the ground, it's beautiful, but it's also wet and it's damp. But that's a great time to test gear because you'll quickly sort out for yourself what really works, what you need to dial in for your layering system and for other odds and ends. Because it's a very just uncomfortable time of year winter camp, because as Martin said, you're going to wake up in the morning and put one thing on, and 2 hours later you're going to put another thing on, and then 4 hours later you're going to change it. But it's a great way to get really familiar with the gear, and it's a great way to find, if you're hot tent camping, it's a great way to get your stove stoking skills back in order after a season of just throwing logs in the fire. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a couple buddies that still prefer cold tenting to hot tenting. And they say just that, well, that's their thing, right? But no, just the whole temperature swing of going from hot to cold, your body just doesn't really acclimatize to the cold temperatures. You know what I mean? And if they got the gear for it, hey, all the power to you, man. I'm over in my hot tent. I'm happy.
Actually, that brings to mind one other thing about backyard camping. If you're going to try backyard camping, here's what not to do, right? Wait until it's dark, right? And then go and set up your tent, right? Or just climb into your tent at night after having set it up before. But leave your nice warm home and then go out and try to sleep in the tent. You're going to freeze. Your body's not acclimated to the cold, right? Your metabolic furnace has to be turned on. And the only way your body's going to burn more calories and warm your body up in response to the air around you is if it feels the cold. You have to experience the cold. You have to allow yourself to suffer the cold a little bit. So if you are going to do the backyard camping thing, make sure you do like an outdoor barbecue or something like that. Cook your supper out there, right? Don't just try to bed down in a cold tent when you come from a warm house. You're just going to find it, a really cruel shock, and you won't be able to last the night.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Now, another question here from Jenny Hill that I'm going to pop up on screen, and it's kind of geared towards Christina. You talked about a space heater with a summer tent. I would have never considered this. Is there a specific heater that you use or that you recommend?
No, just the little ones from like Canadian Tire, Walmart, or whatever, like $20 or $30. I think a little bit more now, but just make sure you have an outdoor extension cord. Be careful when you're plugging in and unplugging things. Plastic in the winter doesn't react the same way. It cracks and splits. I've cracked a couple extension cords in my lifetime doing winter. Put a tarp over your tent, one underneath. Keep the heat in a little bit. And great places like New Lake. I don't know where you're from, Jenny. I think you're local. I've seen your name before. But like a lot of those, my light just fell. Sorry. A lot of those places have park hosts as well. New Lake has park hosts. So if anything ever goes wrong, you've also got that kind of backup. If you don't have a backyard and you do want to try it at a campground, you've got your vehicle there, you've got heated washrooms there, and you've got the camp hosts to kind of help you out. But yeah, just a regular space heater, nothing fancy. That was the first time I winter camped. Pretty much I had a big summer tent, a 9x13, and threw a tarp over top of it, put a space heater in it, and I was sitting in there in my tank top. So.
Yeah. So with that being said, there's a couple different types of camping that we've been mentioning here. We've talked about backcountry camping and front country camping. Front country being, going to a park, say an Algonquin park, or it could be a state park near your location or whatever it might be. And basically you're going to a campground and camping. So you have amenities there in most, or in some cases. Let's talk a little bit about that first, because there's a huge difference between front country camping and backcountry camping. So, Christina, tell us a little bit more about the benefits of front country, and then we'll have Nick tell us a little bit more about the backcountry type of thing.
The benefits of front country?
Yeah.
You mean like starting out, or?
Yeah, well, starting out, there's obviously you're not packing your gear in by foot for miles and miles, right?
No, well, it depends on where you go, right? Like Killarney, you can only walk in. Silent Lake has walk-in sites too, so it is. Some of them are kind of like backcountry. Car camping in the winter, for the most part, is almost like backcountry, but you have all your stuff with you most of the time, depending on if you can drive in or not. And so that's a huge bonus. It's like you said, your buddy didn't bring anything. You've got a car. You can bring as much stuff as you can fit in there. You know, if you get cold, grab another blanket, grab another shirt, you know, whatever. And you've got like some comforts there that you can kind of fall back on and make it a little safer. You should always try first backyard, then car camping of some sort, and then backcountry. Never go straight to backcountry because things work really differently in the wintertime, and you just need to learn all those things first and make sure, you know, your hands work, that you can set up your tent, and, you know, you've got those gloves that work so that you don't have to take them off and get frostbite. Like, there's so many little things. So front country is a great stepping stone or beginner's place to start after you kind of test out the backyard, because you've still got a lot of safety features that will help you in case, you know, something goes wrong or you don't like it or you need to get warm for some reason. So, but
Sure,
you still have that remoteness for the most part. I mean, depending on where you go. I mean, yeah, if you're going to go to Mule Lake at New Year's, obviously it's going to be busy, but every other weekend of the year during the winter, I mean, you can go there, you can camp out in the radio free zone and there's nobody out there. You know, you're still out in the middle of nowhere by yourself, but you're with your car. So it kind of gives you the best of both worlds in the winter, I think.
I got one cool tip for everybody there when I do go front country camping, say for instance at Mule Lake, because as you mentioned, you know, you could bring a space heater with you. I don't bring the space heater for the tent. I bring it for the truck. Reason being is we put our cooler of food inside the truck and we keep the space heater going in there, and your temperature is like always, you know, 40 degrees. It depends on the temperature outside. But it keeps your vehicle inside warm enough that if you do need to get away, and say, for instance, the warming hut's not fired up, you could jump into the vehicle, warm your hands up. Your food's not going to freeze solid, including any water that you may bring with you. You could bring a big jug of water or something, you know, it just makes it a lot easier, that whole process of not having to melt snow or walking to the comfort station to get water. So a good tip for anybody that's front country camping with a vehicle, if you have hydro and you have the ability to bring a heater, a micro furnace, run it in your truck. And we left it going all night, day and night. So, yeah. Nick, tell us a little bit about the backcountry portion of winter camping and the challenges that it might bring compared to front country camping.
Yeah, well, like Christina was saying, when you're front country, you have a lot more flexibility, and I think that's really great. My little workshop that we've got coming up, it's essentially in someone's backyard. It's 40 acres, so we've got a lot of space for people, but the cars are right there. I've got canvas wall tents set up. People can warm up in the middle of the night if they get cold, right? So we have sort of that flexibility for that event too. And when it comes to backcountry, though, you know, backcountry for me isn't a mile or two hiking into the woods. It's you know, multi-day. I've got a 9-day boundary water trip coming up. You know, we're going to be right on the Canadian border. You know, quite far out there. And last time I was up there, it was 40 below the entire week. Sunshine and clear skies and 40 below. So you have to think about all of the what ifs. What if your mucklucks, you know, what if your footwear gets torn up? You know, can you stitch them together? Ask me how I know sometime. It may be snowshoes, they can break. So having the ability to maintain some of those key pieces of gear. We had somebody on a trip a couple years back. They had some modern snowshoes, and the little plastic clip that locks the little strap on the back of the heel broke. And they're a great pair of snowshoes, or, you know, top of the line, but the little plastic clip rendered them useless. So one of the things that I've been working on for our trips is to get rid of sort of our hodgepodge of different types of wood snowshoes and go to sort of one style, so that when we have a spare set, if something does happen to one of them, we can easily just replace that one instead of everybody having their own individual snowshoe, right? So years ago, I used to do backpacking trips in winter on the Ice Age Trail here in Wisconsin. It's about 1,200 miles long, and it's all thick woods. It's up and down all day long. And so the toboggans weren't very, you know, hill friendly. So we used sleds. We had smaller gear, and we were all cold camping. And I did have a little sort of a tiny little nylon tent with a small wood stove that we would use in case something went sideways. We never did have to ever pull it out. But the ability to, at the end of a day, dry out gear, warm up, heat water. When we're in the boundary waters, if we need to go a few extra miles, a few extra hours, if we're struggling to find good firewood or something goes sideways, I know that in the day, I can absolutely make sure that people are warm, dry, and well fed. And that's important for a crew, especially when you are using a lot of, heavier gear for a longer trip like that. We've got, a lot of food, we're wearing a lot of wool clothes and stuff like that. And it's just, having that ability to almost live indefinitely out there if we had all the food that we needed, it gives us a lot of flexibility in that sense. But we also have to haul that stuff out there. So for backcountry, weight's another factor too. I use canvas wall tents. Some people use nylon tents. I've seen some spectacular ultralight setups for winter camping. I got a buddy that has a tent and stove setup. I think it's 6 pounds total, and he's got a cot in there, and it's amazing. And you know what? He uses that stove to heat water and dry out and pass out at night and go to sleep. He doesn't need to hang out in there for hours and chat and do all that thing, right? So his style is sort of light and fast, and everybody has to find their own, what they like. But when we're backcountry, we have to be prepared for getting wet. What if we get a rainy day in the middle of winter? It can happen. And we have to make sure that if a bolt comes off of the leg of our stove and our stove's wonky, that we got some wire or something we can throw in there to make a quick fix. Like stuff happens. What if your stovepipe, you got a stovepipe that comes apart and breaks out there? Can you make that work? So I do a lot of thinking ahead about these sorts of things.
Oh, we lost Nick. He'll be back. Nate, you do a lot of the backcountry stuff. Can you carry on with what he was talking about?
Yeah, sure. Actually, a few things came to mind from the trip I did last in February, and that was nothing really went to plan as far as the weather went at all. And so we had to modify, improvise, and sort of make the best out of like a pretty soggy situation. And yeah, because it was quite a bit warmer than we had anticipated or wanted it to be. And so a lot of the warmer gear that we had brought and that I was frankly looking forward to using just stayed packed away, which is, an old adage where you'd rather be looking at it than looking for it if things went the other way with the temperature, right? So, but to Nick's point, I did bring to Nick's point, I did bring quite the little kit of all sorts of implements that could be sort of universally used to fix stuff. And it actually ended up getting used. Max Budnick broke his snowshoe that I was able to fix with a spare backcountry strap. Jim breaks everything, but Jim broke two poles, like 2 trekking poles, which we were using a lot. And able to, between a couple nuts and bolts that I had and some zip ties, we were able to repair both of those. And just things like that, where you actually have it sort of readily available, so that when it happens on the trail or while you're traveling in the winter, it's not sort of throwing a wrench into the works where it requires sort of a larger break than you can really afford to take on a trip like that. And so to have that kit, that sort of modular kit, readily available with a variety of items that can fix things like that, is completely different than your summer kit, because the nature of what the cold can do to certain things, and what's easiest to work with in the cold. But it's absolutely paramount, especially in the backcountry, to have that kit and have it modified for winter use with the equipment that you're using. 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about being on the ready, especially when you're back in the backcountry, right? Because the stuff's not readily available for you. If you're a front country, if you had to, you could jump in the truck and you could drive somewhere and get something to repair or replenish or whatever. In the backcountry, you need to be a little more self-sufficient, I would say. But both of them are different animals, right? Like some people are just fine. I'm I wouldn't mind doing a nice backcountry trip, but I'm happy doing front country. Christina, you're probably the same way, right?
I actually haven't been getting out into the backcountry as much as I wanted to in the winter because my gear was too heavy. So I've just gotten a bunch of new stuff to kind of remedy that, and I've gone from my tent and my stove being 33 pounds to 8 pounds. So new sleeping bag, new sleeping mat, new tent, nylon tent, which I'm a little bit nervous about, but I've tested it. I did a test already, did a canoe hot tent trip 2 weekends ago when the temperatures weren't crazy cold, to make sure that everything works, to make sure I can set everything up and tear everything down and, you know, get all the quirks out and stuff like that. So, yeah, I would prefer to be in the backcountry in the winter, but like I said, like sometimes you're at a campground and, you know, you walk into Silent Lake, the walk-in sites, there's like 3 yurts and maybe you'll see 2 tents there. Like it depends on when you go, obviously, but you know, you're out there by yourself. It's almost the same thing in a lot of cases. So it just depends on where you go. So yeah, I like both a lot, but I prefer the backcountry always. It's been tough for me to get there by myself with the gear that I had. So I'm anxious to try my new stuff and see the weight difference.
There you go. Yeah, I seen some of your posts of some of the gear that you picked up there, and nice titanium stove, and
it's 4 pounds.
Somebody busted out her wallet.
Some of them were gifted. Some of them I got discounts on, and some of them, well, I got discounts on everything. So great Black Friday sales. I got a new sleeping bag. So yeah, I'm really excited. And I finally have a winter pad for the first time ever. I've been using my summer pad with a closed cell mat and a tarp and another mat, and so now I have a Thermarest X-Therm 6.9 R rating. So I'm really stoked about that.
Now that is something we never talked about when we were talking kind of about sleeping gear, Martin, is how important it is to have insulation underneath you as well as on top of you. What's the reasoning for having, you know, a good underpad underneath you?
Well, arguably, insulation underneath you is more important than the insulation over and around you. I mean, that's counterintuitive too. Everyone's worried about that cold air inside the tent or inside the snow shelter. But really, what's going to suck the heat out of your body is direct contact with the ground, right? And unless you build something up between you and that ground, the earth, which is an endless sink for heat, will just suck all of your heat out of you. And this is a thing that happens to people. You know, they go out camping, they bring their summer pad. It serves them well all summer long. They think it'll work in winter. And of course it doesn't. You know, first of all, if it's inflated with air and there's no insulating fill inside, then that air turns cold immediately. And that the heat, whatever heat is in the air in your pad, bleeds into the ground below. And then the cold air in your pad sucks the air out of you. And so you just keep conducting heat out of your body underneath you, and you will freeze. And so you need a significantly thicker pad or multiple pads, and you can combine. You can use, I mean, what I did for years was I used a good quality summer pad. I had a nice Thermarest summer pad, and I would use 1 or 2 of the closed cell foam pads. You know, the old, you know, the old closed cell foam pads that we used to use back in the day when we started. Not the comfiest to sleep on, but offers excellent insulation, right? And I've experimented with it for a long time, and I found that if you put the closed cell foam on top of the air pad, it's actually better. It sucks less heat out of you that way. I've tried it both ways, back to back, you know, consecutive nights with comparable temperature, and I've noticed an appreciable difference if you put the closed cell foam on top of the pad. But there's another thing you can do, and that is, I mean, if you're on Crown land, you know, you can put down boughs. You can cut boughs from evergreen trees and lay those down and build up a bedding layer that way that will insulate you from the ground. You can bring lots of wool blankets, fold them in half, and get them in between. That doesn't work as well as people like to think. Like if you watch a lot of YouTube videos of bushcrafters, you know, they'll go out in the winter with just, you know, a wool blanket, and that's not going to give you much insulation from the ground. You better get up off the ground some other way. That one layer of wool is not going to do it. But there's one thing to keep in mind, and that is when you are sleeping, if you feel a cold spot underneath you, it's never going to go away. It will only get worse. People feel that cold spot under their hip or under their shoulder, whether they're on their back or on their side or whatever. They feel a cold spot and they think, oh, it's okay. It'll warm up. No, it's you against planet Earth, which is an endless sink of heat. It will never get warmer. You will never warm it up. It will just get colder, and that cold spot will expand, and then you'll get other cold spots and they'll expand and you'll be freezing. So if that happens, then just cast about for anything you have, any garment that you're not wearing. Get it underneath it, between you and the ground where that cold spot is, under your shoulder, under your hip, under your buttocks, under the middle of your back, wherever you feel the cold spot, insulate between you and it, because I promise you, it'll only get worse. And then you'll find yourself with uncontrollable shivers. It's easy to warm up when you're a little cold. It's harder to warm up again once you've gotten very cold, because you've lost that heat. Right. And then you have to, take extra measures to bring your body heat back up. And it is your body that heats up your sleeping bag. There's no heat in your sleeping bag unless you put a hot water bottle in there or something. Right. Your body heats up your sleeping bag, but your body heats up the insulation below you as well. So if you're sleeping on a big balloon, empty balloon-like pad that's like the kind of thing like a floaty that you would put in the pool or something like that, that's going to be filled with cold air in no time, and that's going to suck the heat out of you, right? And you can't heat that up with your body, right? And that's why closed cell foam works so well, is it doesn't conduct heat out of you.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what? That's even evident in the summertime. If you've ever gone camping in the summertime, and you had one of those big, Coleman air or mattresses, you'll actually build a shiver. Or even Nick could attest to this. Hammock camping. If you don't have something underneath you, you're going to freeze even in the middle of the summertime, because the air all around your body is just going to wick that heat away from you, and before you know it, you're cold, right? So, Nate?
Yeah, I actually, the first time I ever went backcountry winter camping was with Martin, and so I had a very fast, very good crash course. And after that, what I actually did was started bringing a sort of thinner polar fleece top that I would put in my sleeping bag when I went to bed, that I would be able to shift around to where it was needed, so that it was already there in my body. It already warmed it up. It was thin enough where it didn't feel bulky or in the way in my sleeping bag, and I was just able to shift it around to wherever that cold spot was building. And it's like, because it's a top, there's enough material there where you can sort of shift it around to maybe even like a couple spots without it not being enough. But yeah, having that already in place and not trying to reach for a cold item out of your bag to fix that cold spot goes a long way.
Good point. Yeah.
Just a side note too, I don't know, some people don't know this, but try to avoid blowing up your sleeping pad with your mouth if you can, because if you're getting spittle in there, it's going to put moisture in your pad and it's going to make it colder. So if you get a little pump, or what are those pump sacks called? Pump sack, is that what it's called?
Yeah, the big airbag.
You roll. I don't know. I got one with my new sleeping mat and I can't figure out how to work it, but I have a Flextail pump and I love that thing, and because there's just so much moisture that gets in there, and that will make you cold as well. So
also too, if you have all that warm air going into your bag, especially if you're cold camping, once the air in your pad starts to get cooler too, it's going to flatten out a little bit on you.
That's right.
Yeah, and it gets hard. It gets brittle, right? It's if things don't already get hard and brittle out there with the cold temperatures, if you have moisture inside your underpad there, you're going to end up with a stiff underpad. It's at that point we're just going to take a really quick commercial break. And we're going to return back there. And Christina's got a little giveaway that she's going to do, and then we'll get back on with panel, and we'll cover a bunch more topics here in a few moments. We'll be back in a second here.
There's nothing like being out there. For over 50 years, we've been connecting people with nature by building classic Canadian canoe designs using the best materials available. We built a reputation on durable, dependable canoes that allow you to focus on what's important. Whether that's unplugging in remote wilderness, spending quality time with your favorite people, or nailing the perfect line. Visit novacraft.com to find the perfect canoe for you and locate your nearest authorized dealer.
Tonight's episode of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show is brought to you by Kid Products, stick stoves and reflector ovens proudly made in Canada. Algonquin Outfitters, with 5 key locations in and around Algonquin Park to serve your backcountry needs. Salis Marine, keeping you safe on the water since 1999. Ostrom Outdoors, custom fit canoe packs and barrel harnesses. And Novacraft Canoes, connecting you with nature in Canadian-made canoes since 1970. Alrighty, well, welcome back to the second half of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show. Sorry, didn't mean to scare you, Christina.
I just put my light up and I'm all like up in the... See
Christina has put together a course that she offers on Udemy on winter camping for beginners. Tell everybody a little bit about that and just sort of the nutshell version. And then I understand you have a couple of versions that you wanted to give away.
Yeah. It's winter camping for beginners. Dennis, you've taken it. You've told me that it's not just for beginners. There's lots of tips for everybody, but I have a focus for beginners. All different ways, the different types of camping, as we were talking about. I call them warm camping, which is camping with a tent with a space heater, hot tenting, and cold camping. It's a 3-hour-ish course. There's like over 100 different lectures. It's just a video of me talking, and then on the other side of the screen, there's, you know, images of whatever type of gear I'm talking about. There's all kinds of cheater tips, different ways that you can kind of get around buying a lot of expensive gear, as we were talking about earlier, and, you know, just kind of testing it out. And I mean, there's everything there pretty much. I haven't had any complaints about the course. It's doing really well. And I want to give a couple of them away for your show today. So if anybody wants to send me an email, if you're interested in learning how to winter camp, or if you have a friend that, you know, or a spouse, maybe you want to teach your girlfriend or boyfriend, but you don't want to get in that kind of zone because it can be kind of argumentative sometimes. Yeah, you can give it to somebody else. Just send me an email at camperchristina@outlook.com and tell me why you want a free course. I told Dennis I'd give away 2, but we'll see. If I get some good emails, maybe I'll give away more. Just depends on what you tell me and why you want to learn. So,
well, you know what? Like you said, I took the course, and you were worried that it was only going to be for beginners, and you take away from it whatever you can. If you pick up one tip from this course, being a experienced winter camper, or somebody that's like complete newbie, anything you could take away from it, everybody has a different method of doing things.
Yeah.
And if I could learn something that's a lot easier, and they're called tips and tricks, right? If you can learn a tip or a trick from somebody else, that's going to make your efforts easier, because everything is magnified out there. Starting a fire is not as easy in the wintertime per se as it is in the summertime.
Yeah,
when you're dealing with cold
keep
hands,
your lighter somewhere warm,
yep,
so that it always starts, because if you don't, it might not start. Same with your fuel, right? All these little tidbits that will really help to get you out there and make you have a more enjoyable time, and hopefully bring you back out there again because you liked it so much.
Yeah. Now, Camper Christina also has another course too, which is a backcountry camping for beginners for summertime. So you know what? You can check both of them out. Anyways, let's bring the rest of the panel back up here on stage. I'll leave Christina's email address on there for another minute, so that if anybody needs to get it, yeah, right here. Woo-hoo. There it is. And welcome back, Nate. Welcome back, Martin. And welcome back, Nick. And we got everybody right back in the same order again. That's great.
Wow.
Alrighty. Martin, you mentioned in our little private chat that somebody had a great question about boots. Can you field that question?
Yeah, well, I don't have it in front of me, but the question was just, what are the best boots to to wear for winter camping. And I have to say, that is probably the one article of clothing that people have the most misconceptions about, because most people don't think about different kinds of boots, right? They think about a particular brand. Should I get this brand or that brand? And what most people do is they go out and they get a winter hiking boot. It's insulated inside, but the insulation is integrated inside the boot. And the problem with that kind of boot is that it's a moisture trap. And keeping warm is largely about moisture control. And people are going to be tired of hearing me say the words moisture control over the years. But I mean, it really is important, right? You want clothes that vents moisture, and your feet are sweating constantly when you're skiing or snowshoeing or just trudging around in the snow. Your feet are sweating, and you might not feel it, but they are, and your socks will get damp. And if there's nowhere for that moisture to go, if there's nothing that's absorbing that moisture that can be dried out or outside, if it can't get outside the boot, then it accumulates inside the insulation of that boot. And then what happens is you take your boots off at night, your socks are damp. Well, you can dry your socks off in your sleeping bag at night. They can air dry, they can body dry inside it's called night drying inside your sleeping bag. But your boots are not, and they're going to freeze hard. That moisture is going to be just hard. And then when you have to get into your boots in the morning, it's going to be hard. It's going to be like trying to get into like a ski boot that's too small for you. It's just going to be a piece of ice, and it's not going to thaw and warm up until your feet thaws it out with your own heat. And that's miserable, and it takes a long time. And you know, it's about as unpleasant as it could be. And it just gets worse and worse with every day, right? So if you're out there for multiple nights, you're in for a lot of suffering in your feet. And it's not just in the morning that you experience the suffering, right? When things slow down, when you stop moving, the sweat inside your boot gets colder and colder and colder, and you start bleeding heat out of the boot that way. So what happens is your boots will allow heat to escape through conduction with wetness inside in your sock and inside the insulation of the boot. It'll allow heat to escape, but it won't allow moisture to escape. So the problem just gets worse and worse, hour by hour and day by day. So what I always recommend to people is get pack boots. And if you don't know what a pack boot is, it's those old ski boots that we used to have as a kid. It's sort of, kind of rubbery on the bottom, and then there's like some kind of canvas or a synthetic upper, but inside is a felt liner. If you can get wool liners, that's ideal. But if not, if it's just a synthetic liner, that's fine too. The point is, these liners, they come right out. You can take them right out of the boot. And if you have a spare set, okay, so the liner comes right out, and then you can dry out the boot and dry out the liner. You dry the liners of your boots in your sleeping bag at night, unless they're soaking wet, unless you stepped in a creek and got a soaker. The moisture from your foot sweat will dry out overnight in your sleeping bag. Just tuck it into your sleeping bag where you're sleeping with you, on top of you, and your body heat will warm this up, and it will allow the moisture to escape through your sleeping bag, and your clothes will dry at night. So you can dry your damp socks, you can dry your boot liners. And if you bring a spare set of liners, then you're fine. And even if you don't have a spare of liners, if this is all you have, at least in the morning, you're starting warm and dry. All right. Mm-hmm. If you have a spare set of liners, that's great, because then if you get a soaker, all you need to do is change your socks and change your liners, and you're fine. So I always recommend that people get felt liners with a pack boot. And if you can get a spare set, that's great. If you don't have that, if you can't find anything like that, what I started out with as a kid was rubber boots that were too big, but that we take an old felt liner and put those in there, and that works as well. I mean, the rubber boot doesn't let any moisture escape along its entire length, so it gets really sweaty, but it works. And I seem to remember Kevin Callan in an early winter camping video showing himself wearing rubber boots like that with felt liners. So, and those are not expensive. You can go to Canadian Tire and get those. But boots like this, Banff and Kamek brands and stuff like that, they're not excessively expensive. They're not as expensive as a fancy winter hiking boot, and they'll last you for years. The downside is they're kind of heavy and clunky. They're ungainly. So that's the downside of them, but they keep you warm, like much warmer than almost anything else. And if you're going in at a time of winter that's really, really dry, the best of all is to wear a winter moccasin that's made out of hide. It has a felt liner inside, but it's made out of hides. So this lower part is deer hide. This upper part happens to be moose hide. I made these myself from a pattern from Lure of the North Outfitters. And inside is a felt liner. Okay, and you can just swap those out. So it's the same principle, except all of the fabric breathes and vents moisture. This is not good to wear, though, when you're getting close to the freezing point, because they can get wetted out. But in dry or deeper cold, these are outstanding. There's nothing warmer because they're pliable. They allow your foot not to just breathe, but to move. And the more your foot moves, the more you can curl your toes and stuff like that, the warmer your foot will stay. Anything that has a hard sole keeps your foot relatively inert, and so there's less blood flow and less circulation. So this is the ultimate in certain seasons. But in the other seasons, I go with pack boots, and I would recommend them strongly to anybody. And if you don't have them, that doesn't mean you can't go, but you'll have a much easier time with pack boots.
Well, one thing that I find with the pack boot, though, like I wear a size 13, maybe 13 and a half. I got a big foot, right? And when you have a big boot like that, trying to fit them in snowshoes, trying to fit them in those skis, the skis I bought off you there, Nate, the short skis, it's next near to impossible, right? So in some cases you might have to go with a hiker boot, but that would then be a separate pair of boots that you would utilize. So in my case, I have to bring 2 pairs of boots with me when I go winter camping, even though I have liners, two liners. Okay, I got Nick and Nate with their hands up. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, let me jump in here real quick. I just want to say that on my guided trips, I personally use a buffalo hide muckluck. I've had a full soaker, through the ice on the edge of a river and through a pond once or twice. And because they are so breathable, especially if it's really, really cold, I've been able to hike with those, and 3-4 hours later, they're dry. The heat from my body can help. It just pushes that moisture right out, and they do actually dry. When people come on my trips, a lot of times they don't have those, mucklucks. They don't have canvas or leather mucklucks. So those pack boots he was showing is sort of a one boot to kind of do everything. It's half of it's waterproof, half of it's breathable. But we do always, bring a spare set of liners. But for people that do bring a breathable muckluck like an N1B, or like I got a Lou of the North buffalo hide mucks, but I will also bring a really flexible, easily packable rubber boot too, just because if you do get really heavy slush or really wet weather, whereas that pack boot, if I had those, I'd probably just bring those. I wouldn't need to have 2 separate sets of footwear. So
cool. Nate?
I would just add, because I think we're still talking about cold camping when we're talking about stuffing socks into your sleeping bag, which is when you're cold camping is a great way to dry that out. But one of the most beautiful aspects of hot tent camping is being able to very efficiently dry out all your wet gear from the day before, including your boots. And this goes to what Martin was talking about, though, because even with those integrated insulated hikers, which give you a good responsive boot and insulation that's built into the boot, it's still difficult to dry those in a hot tent. For whatever reason, sometimes the heat just has trouble like reaching the end of that boot to dry out that insulation, and it is difficult. So even when you're hot tent camping, having a boot like this, I've been using these for a few years now. They're made by Baffin. So they're a little stiffer than that white boot that Martin has, so they give me a little bit more support. I'm a bigger individual, and so sometimes that's handy. But they still have a completely separate liner that can be taken in and out. These are replaceable as well. And then just as something I have experimented with that I've found great success with, especially for snowshoeing and using the hybrid skis, is that oftentimes those type of boots will not come with an insole at all, or if they do come with an insole, it looks like this, and it's useless. If you ante up and do yourself a favor and get either a thermal footbed or sort of like a stiffer, denser orthotic footbed for your boots, not only do they add insulation from the ground up, they will make a long day on snowshoes or skis, the hybrid skis, much, much more comfortable on your feet. Because all of a sudden what you're doing when you're winter camping is unless you're really lucky and you get to do this, as your job, all week long, you're going from your everyday footwear all of a sudden into a type of footwear that you're really not used to wearing a lot. And so to be able to support your foot, especially if you're snowshoeing all day long, a decent footbed like this will give you support. It'll add insulation, just like that foam, just like that foam sleeping pad we were talking about. And it'll also be able to be, you'll be able to dry this out in your hot tent very, very quickly. So
I also want to throw in real quick, somebody had made a comment, I think Steve Fritz made a comment about this, using a plastic bag over your sock. If you have, let's say that you have a fully rubberized boot and you put a plastic bag, durable plastic bag, over a liner sock, maybe underneath your heavy wool sock, all right, sweat's not going to get into your boot insulation. So you might be losing heat through the boot like you would regardless, but you're not going to have the moisture issue. You will have a moisture issue inside of that plastic bag, but you can swap out liner socks. At the end of the day, they're going to dry quicker too. It's a lot faster drying than trying to dry, really, really damp boot liners. So in my experience, not all plastic bags are equal. My feet go right through bread bags. I found turkey liner bag, and I don't use these too often, but I really recommend shopping around. I think turkey liner bags do pretty good. They're pretty durable, but I think there's probably waterproof socks out there now or something. Gore-Tex socks.
Turkey what?
Like turkey oven liner bags.
Oh, like the Mylar bags.
Yeah.
Cooking turkey in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Those are nice and large.
Turkey comes in a bag.
Yeah. So you put that over the liner sock, and then if you put a wool sock over it, it keeps it sort of together, so it's not sliding everywhere. It's up there with a camping hack, I guess. But it does hold its own.
What about these down-filled booties that you see a lot of people use that you could pick up at MEC or REI or different outdoorsy stores? Are they all they're cracked up to be, or what?
Those are nice.
So I use those. I've used them on a couple trips now if I've got the room. And what they are is they're really nice to slip onto your foot at the end of the day while you're just hanging out in the tent making dinner. So nice. So your socks are drying out, your boot liner's drying out, your boots drying out, and you're able to just sort of toss on something super comfortable and really warm to warm up your feet if they're cold, or just something to keep you from cooling down, because usually aside from your sleeping pad and maybe a kneeling pad, you're still camping out on the snow in a hot tent, right? So having those booties just to be able to even just step outside really quick or maneuver around the tent and your feet still stay warm is a really, really nice option. And now you can get them. They're so light and packable. I've been taking some on the last couple of trips I've been on, and it's been well worth it for me, just for the sheer sort of, a little bit of luxurious comfort at the end of the day.
Even for the middle of the night, for those of us that have to get up, 3 o'clock or 3 and 5,
Here we go.
3 and 5, and you don't have your water. It's nice to just have something quick and easy to slip on your feet to manage to go, right? And,
you just wanted to give him that segue, eh, Dennis? There you go.
Okay, thank you for teeing that up for me. So one of the worst things about sleeping in the cold at night is having to get up to pee, right? Because you unzip your bag, you crawl out of your bag, you crawl out of your tent, you go outside and you pee. And all that heat that's in your sleeping bag escapes, and all that heat that's on your body, that nice warm envelope of heat, it just blows off of you as soon as you walk out into that cold night air, and then you go out and you pee. And you come back and then your sleeping bag is cold, right? So then you have to crawl inside and you have to rewarm your sleeping bag with your body heat. So this costs you calories, your body temperature drops while you do this, and it's kind of unpleasant. There's a solution. People here have heard me say it before. Use a pee bottle. Go out and you get yourself a 1 liter Nalgene bottle and pee in that. So if you're a guy, it's easy. You don't even have to get out of your sleeping bag. You can just unzip it and roll over on your side and pee into the pee bottle. Nalgene bottles are great because they don't leak. They have great leak-proof caps. And as long as you're not clumsy and spill in the sleeping bag, you're fine. You literally don't have to get out of your sleeping bag. You might just have to unzip it a little bit to create a little bit more room. And if you're a lady, it works the same way. My ex-wife used to do it all the time. She would unzip, she'd crawl a little bit out of the sleeping bag just to get up onto her knees, cup the opening where she needed to put it, and she'd pee into the bottle. And now you are not losing all that heat overnight. And it's important for a couple of reasons, actually, to pee in the night. A lot of people don't want to pee at night. They don't want to face the cold. They don't want to crawl out of the warm sleeping bag and out into the cold air. So they hold on to it, right? But the problem is holding on to pee makes you shiver. Anything that's in your body has to be brought up to body temperature. So any amount of urine that collects in your bladder has to be kept at body temperature, and that costs your body calories, and it will result in a tendency to shiver. And so if you're having a hard time sleeping and you have an urge to pee, just pee, and you'll have a much easier time falling back asleep and warming up. So it's important that you express the urine out of your body. Don't try to hold on to it. It'll make you cold. It'll keep you up. It'll tend to induce shivering in you. And a pee bottle is a way of not having to go out into the cold night air. And mountaineers have been doing this for ages. They used to have these canteens. They used to pee in them. They used to keep them just for that reason. And then they would take that canteen or that bottle of warm urine, and they would put it in their sleeping bag. And now that problem of urine in your body that has to be warmed up turns into a solution. Now it's a foot warmer. They keep it in the foot of their sleeping bag, and it just adds, right? And eventually it loses its heat, and then you take it out, right? And then you empty it out in the morning. But a pee bottle is something I can't stress enough. It really adds to the quality of your sleep. It ensures that you don't have to get up so much in the night. And if you're one of those people who has to get up many times in the night, it makes even more sense to use a pee bottle. I'm looking at you.
My dad used to bring a Tide jug. And he used to fill the darn thing. I was like, holy geez, how much are you even drinking throughout the day? Christina, from a woman's aspect, your thoughts on this? Like, do you have any tips or tricks or techniques that you care to share with the ladies?
I don't actually, because my problem is not getting up to pee. I have colitis, so I mean, there have been nights where I'm getting out of the tent 4 times to go to the bathroom, and it's not something I'm going to do in the tent. Right. I don't have any tips or tricks for that. Just get better. So you don't have to do it as much, but I just do what I got to do. I mean, I'm not going to stop camping because of that, but yeah, it can be tough. Yeah. I wanted to answer a bit about the boots. I actually wear hiking boots when I winter camp for the most part. I don't like to wear my mocks because I wear snowshoes most of the time, and I don't want to wreck my snowshoes, wreck my mocks. So I have polar fleece hikers from Keene, and I don't have any problems with them. I just bring extra socks, and I dry my socks, or I keep my socks in my sleeping bag at night, and I keep the boots inside of my tent, and I don't really have too many problems with freezing and stuff like that. But I think Nancy also asked about gloves, which I just wanted to touch on. Get yourself a really good pair of gloves. Mittens will keep your hands warmer, as everybody knows, because your fingers can hang out with each other and they warm each other. But what I like to use, and it's because I film, right? I film and I take pictures, and I'm constantly using my phone. And there are days where, winter times where I've camped and I haven't taken off my gloves for an entire day. So I get some really thin, like almost liners or texting gloves. Mark's Work Warehouse has a lot of good ones that aren't super expensive. Try them out in the store if you're using your phone and you want to take pictures, because a lot of people do that when they go out. And then I'll wear my mittens over top. And if my hands get really cold, I'll take the liners off and just wear the mittens. But that way, when you go to set up camp, like, you need your fingers. There are a lot of things that, you're not used to in the winter, and you need your fingers for a lot of things. And if you're wearing mittens, sometimes you can't do anything. So then you have to take the mitten off and you've got your bare hands, and then you're exposing your hands. And if it's -20 out, you're gonna get problems. So I always wear thin liners underneath my mitts. If it's super cold, I'll put the mitts over top, and then that way my hands are never exposed, unless I have to do something to take the gloves off. But I just find that really helpful.
Right, Nate?
That's Nate.
Yeah, over mitts or mitts with a removable liner are fantastic. Again, going back to one of the joys of hot tenting, being able to completely dry out your mitts, usually with a removable liner or not, very, very well. And the other thing I would say, if I'm in the, I also use my phone a lot for taking photos and things like that. And what I have found to be indispensable, because, if you're snowshoeing or pulling a sled, or maybe you're using your trekking poles, and you've got like your phone going and a camera, or, either or, and you're juggling a mitt under your arm, whatever. I use mitten strings all the time now. And I rig, and I usually find a point on the mitt, whether it's just at the cuff, down here, if it's an over mitt, or here. Oftentimes there'll be a point in your mitts or gloves where they're meant to clip together, and that's a great point to attach some shock cord, and then tie a loop in that, or make a loop in that, the other end of the shock cord, and close it off with just a cord lock toggle for around here. And then that way, if you take off your mitt or glove, whoop, it's dangling there and ready for you to slip it back on without you realizing that you dropped it in the snow 40 feet back. And now you're looking for it in 2 feet of fresh snow. So homemade mitten strings, a little bit of shock cord and some cord lock and a bit of creativity can go a long way if you're constantly using your hands for other stuff.
Christina, I know you had something to add about gloves there, right?
Yeah, no, I just did, but just to tap on that a little bit more, Nate was talking about electronics. For those of you that want to film or take pictures, winter, again, is a totally different beast. Your batteries do not work the same way. You've got to keep your electronics warm. I know my friend Riley has a great tip where they use a hot pocket in their pocket and then keep their phone in there with it. I find that your phone can just, you can have 80% on your phone and it'll just shut off because of the cold. So I always keep a portable charger with me. And I find it's just like a boost, like you're jumping your car. You plug it in, you turn it on, the phone comes right back to life. It's still at the 80%, but just something to think of as well. Batteries, lighters, all of those types of things. You've got to keep them warm if you're going to be cold camping, especially because they will die a lot faster.
With batteries,
nice.
One thing I've noticed is if you let the batteries go cold, if you let your phone get cold, if you've got batteries packed away, if you just pre-warm them before you replace your headlamp batteries, if you just warm up before you turn them on, before you use them, it seems to keep them lasting quite a bit longer too.
Yeah,
I want to see that, Nate.
Nate's got show and tell. Oh,
Can't
can't hear you, Nate.
Oh, no, you don't.
Try again.
There you go.
Oh, you might have to get you to leave and come back in, and then we'll get you back on for that. Sorry, everybody. Nate's having a little technical difficulty. Martin, you got something to add there?
Yeah. So I'm skinny, and I get cold. I like winter camping, but I don't like the cold. I'm like Christina. I don't really love the cold. So I'm very careful about how I dress. I'm very careful about staying dry. But one of the things that I find I suffer from the most is cold hands and cold fingers, right? Not so much cold feet. I seem to solve the footwear problem, but cold hands is a real problem. And I was married to someone who had Raynaud's syndrome. And I have a good friend who has Raynaud's syndrome, and that's a circulation issue that causes your fingers and toes to get cold very easily, and then it takes a long time for them to warm up again, and it's very painful, and it's debilitating. You literally lose the ability to manipulate things when you have that. But it can happen to anyone. You don't have to have Raynaud's syndrome to have that. But one of the things I find that keeps my hands and fingers warm is wristies, these little wrist warmers. Okay. These are made by Willpower, but there's all kinds of companies that make them. You can even take a sock and make them. But basically, it's just a tube with a hole for your thumb, and it goes over your base layer, usually over your base layer, and you can wear your mittens and gloves over top of it. But when you take off your gloves or your mittens for any reason, and you need to barehandedly tie a shoelace or fiddle with the zipper or something like that in the cold, it's not your whole hand that that is exposed, and that seems to make a difference. And for those of us that are really, really scrawny, the blood vessels are really, really close to the surface around your wrist. And so you lose heat really rapidly. And so these little wrist warmers make a huge difference. So I recommend them with enthusiasm to anyone who, like me, loses heat a lot and finds they get cold hands easily. Wristies or wrist warmers they're a huge boon. And these are like, I don't know, 30 or 40 bucks. They're not excessively expensive, but they will make a huge difference.
That's a great idea. My merino wool undergarments or base layers have the longer sleeves with the holes in the thumb. And I find that does make a huge difference because that snow or that cold doesn't get up there. So great tip.
They look like they'd be super easy to make too. Like even if you go to Value Village and you find, like you said, a shirt that has the holes, or you could just make them like fairly simply.
I made them out of socks. I used to make them out of socks. I used to find plushy synthetic socks, and I'd cut them, and I'd do a whip stitch around the openings, and I'd cut a hole for my thumb. And that worked great, but I wanted some that were out of wool, so I got these. But another advantage is they do keep snow from going up your cuffs and stuff like that. So if you wipe out or something like that, and you go flying off your snowshoes, and you throw your hands up in front of you to catch yourself, you get snow going all the way up your sleeve, right? But that's not going to happen if you're wearing these. Right? You're kind of protected that way.
Sure. I have a question. Earlier, we were talking about sleeping. We were talking about to stay warm, moisture management. We haven't really touched on the changing your clothing before you go to bed. You've been working all day. Who wants to touch on that? Nick, you got a huge smile on your face.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay. I'm gonna be real honest here. It's one of those things that I've kind of said and taught for a long time. Change your clothes. It's a great idea, but at the end of the day, I think it's sort of to each their own. You want to go to bed and you want to be dry, and that's the most important thing. I've been on some trips where sometimes I'm just too tired. I just want to go to bed. But those are hot tent trips, and I know that I'm dry before I go to bed. If you're cold camping, I think it's definitely something that you want to consider. It is difficult when you're cold camping to swap out clothes because the clothes that you're going to put on before bed are usually going to be chilly. So it's also a good tip to throw tomorrow's clothes or the clothes that you took off in your sleeping bag so in the morning they're nice and warm. It's no fun putting frozen base layers or cold pants on in the morning. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that you're going to bed dry. If you got moisture issues going on, it's going to keep you up. So some people sleep in just base layers. I'm sure this might get into a bigger topic later about wearing too much at night. But if you've got a good sleep system, you don't need to wear a whole lot. If you've got a substantial sleeping bag and pad, that's sufficient. But yeah, some people like to get out. If they have synthetic base layers, maybe they're really thin or they're smelly or they're not very comfortable. A lot of folks on my trips still bring cheap fleece pajama pants, things like that. They're just a little bit softer, especially against that cold nylon in your sleeping bag. So I don't think it's a necessary requirement having pajamas at night anymore. But again, it's really more about, I think, just making sure that you're going to bed dry and warm.
Yeah, I'm like you. I if I'm really building up a sweat before I'm going to bed, then yeah, I'm going to change out of that. But if I've been sitting there and I'm comfortable and I'm feeling dry or, maybe at the most slightly damp, I find that once you jump into your sleeping bag and like Martin was talking about, the body warming or drying of your other clothing or your socks or your boot liners, your body's you're gonna dry out through the night.
I should also note that I'm a very warm sleeper. I don't get cold easily at all, so I can get away with quite a bit, and I have in the past. But yeah. I know folks that will use a -40 bag in end of September or early October. So it really depends. Is that you, Christina?
Yeah. I use my winter bag all year.
Yep. So
that's why I got to get a new one because it's like dead.
Yep.
Nate, you were going to show us something before you had tech difficulties. First off, do you have volume or voice? Oh gosh, still can't hear you.
You need Starlink.
Yeah, you're showing like an electronics box. You want to hold that up for us? And we'll describe it to people that are just listening. He's having difficulty with his. So he's holding up a shiny. It looks like a cooler type of box with reflectits. And man, I wish you had volume.
I bet you could put like a hand warmer in there to keep yourself warmed up, or yeah.
Did you make that,
he's nodding
Nate?
his head, yeah. Is it heavy?
You made it.
Yeah, it looks like one of those waterproof boxes, and it looks like he's put Reflectex around it. I want to say something about insulating electronics. A lot of people think that if you insulate electronics, it will work, and it won't. If you take something like your phone and put it out in the cold, and you put it in some insulating container, in no time it's going to lose its heat, and it's going to be as cold with or without that sleeve that you made, right? So making a little Reflectex sleeve for your phone is not going to do a thing, right? In fact, the best thing to do is like keep your phone close to your body, and same thing with your battery packs and stuff. Like keep them close to your body when you can, or use a chemical heat package, right? Those hand warmers and stuff like that. That's the only thing that's going to keep them warm. And if you have, I knew someone who had made one of those little insulated sleeves for the phone, and then thought it was going to make a difference and extend battery life, but it doesn't, because there's no heat in there. The phone doesn't produce any of its own heat, right? And that's what insulation does, is it traps heat, right? But your phone, it doesn't emit much heat, and so it's not going to stay warm that way. And in fact, if you put that phone in an insulated sleeve and you put it in your pocket, you have just insulated your phone against your own body heat, right? You're preventing your body from warming it up. So I actually advise people not to do that. But the thing that Nate has there, if you take enough mass and you put it in there, right, that is going to be a thermal mass. And if those things are emitting heat, that they'll retain some heat. But if you put one chemical warming pack in there, that's going to be fantastic. They're going to stay warm because they're in an insulated box. So I presume he's nodding. So I presume that's what he does. He uses some kind of insulated pad, or you can use a water bottle or something like that, like an Nalgene bottle or something like that, filled with warm water, and that would keep it nice and warm and keep your batteries nice and toasted.
Sure. Vocal test for you there, Nate.
Yep, those are them.
Yep. Yeah,
So these are from the dollar store. I go usually in the fall, and I buy like 10 of these, and I just keep them in my cupboard, and I bring a couple on every trip. So you've always got them, and they're super cheap. And this is actually a body warmer. It's a good size. I like to put mine right here in my sports bra on the top here, and keeps my chest nice and warm. And these things last forever. I used one a couple of weekends ago. I think I ripped it open at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I went to leave camp at like 11 in the morning. It was still hot. So they're really great, and they're good for emergencies. It's always good to keep these in your emergency kit. Just doesn't take up any room, right? Something that could help you if you get into trouble.
They say there are key points on your body where you could put heating devices like that. I guess the arteries on the inside of your thighs, right, is a great place, because they carry so much blood up to the heart, which then pumps it through your body. And Nick was just showing under his armpits. Yeah.
I think Nate has sound back, yes?
You have sound back, Nate?
I think so, yeah.
Hey, welcome back, Nate.
Tell us about your bag.
Volume issue guy.
No, this is just like a GSI sort of gearbox, like a universal clear plastic gearbox that I put. What did you call it, Martin?
Reflectex.
Yeah. I bought a whole roll of Reflectex from Home Depot in preparation for the trip I did in February, and I had a whole bunch left, so I just started going Reflectex crazy, and this is one of the things I made. But yeah, it works really well if you open up a couple of those heat packs, dump them in, and seal it up, and it definitely helps. And the other thing I would say too is that those heat packs come just as ones that you would put in your pocket or your mitt or whatever. But you'll also notice that you can get ones with a sticky backing that will often be for heat. And those are often the best ones to use on the back of your GoPro or your phone, because then they are placed where you want them to be and not sort of shifting around in your pocket and not necessarily directly connected to your phone or your GoPro or whatever. So oftentimes those sticky ones
or even just a rubber band to keep it in place is very helpful for your electronics to make sure it's just not sort of ambient in your pocket and it has more direct contact.
Sure thing. Yeah, makes sense.
I have a question for the panel.
Yep.
I mentioned earlier I have a new nylon hot tent, which is replacing my homemade solo tent that I built 6 years ago. And condensation. Anybody have any tips or tricks or information on that? It's got 2 vents in it. I'm running a wood stove, obviously. I'm trying to keep the wood stove going, but Martin, you'll be happy to know I might not keep it going all night. It only goes for about 2 hours, I think, is the maximum that I got to burn wood, and then it's just because it's very tiny. But yeah, I noticed condensation on the side of the tent. Now I know that the company Light Outdoors that I got the tent from, they do sell condensation liners to put inside the tent. I opted to wait and see, but any tricks or stuff like that? I noticed, especially right beside where I was sleeping on the wall there, it was very wet. So I know don't touch the sides. Someone told me that, but anybody got anything else for that?
The condensation, it's going to be no different than a regular summer tent. It's just, it's going to be frozen, obviously. So, I see a lot of back and forth discussion in social media land about the pros and cons. Look, if you want a lightweight tent, get a nylon tent. Will there be condensation? Yes. If it's really cold out, all your breath is going to freeze. There'll be lots of it. But it's frozen. So if you have a stove in there, at least, so you said it's a very compact, small stove. That's going to be for drying things out in the morning.
Yeah, it was it's shoulder season when I took it. It was only, that zone that Martin doesn't like, right? -2, -1, -4. So
sure,
it wasn't quite frost yet. But
about the best you can do is just ventilate as best you can. If the weather's nice, keep the door open and just let all the fresh, just like you would with a summer tent. The canvas wall tents are great. There's a lot less kind of condensation, but you know what? When I put 5 or 6 people in a canvas wall tent, we still get condensation at 40 below the back wall. It's still in there.
Really?
And it disappears when we fire up the stove. And that tent weighs, 35 pounds. And it's the nature of the beast. So don't feel bad if you get condensation. It's just going to happen. But it'll dry quick and your tent weighs like nothing. So it's awesome.
I have a canvas tent. I have a snow tracker tent, and there's condensation every morning. The poles are covered in condensation. The fabric itself has some condensation because it's as cold inside as it is outside, right? And as soon as
because you let your stove go out. I was like, wait,
That's
I've
right.
never had that in my
I let my stove go out. Yeah, I let my stove go out at night, and so as soon as it hits that cold canvas, it just turns into a liquid, and then it freezes, right? But the difference between a canvas tent and a nylon tent is canvas breathes. So when you fire up the stove, it doesn't just sort of liquefy and then run down the tent. It just gets expressed. The tent breathes, right? So that's the advantage of a canvas tent, is that you can get rid of that moisture and that condensation that's accumulated overnight. Before you're done breakfast, that condensation is long gone. It doesn't accumulate, it doesn't run down the walls, it doesn't pool on anything, it's not going to drip. So you don't have to worry about it, right? So with a nylon tent, you're going to have that problem. I agree with Nick. Open the door, open the windows. Whatever you can open to get some ventilation going, go ahead. And if you're going to be sleeping at cold at night, then it's counterintuitive. You're going to open up as many vents as possible, but you'll be drier in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So you just want to block the wind. That's all the tent is doing at night, is blocking the wind. It's not really trapping a whole lot of heat. Your sleep system is what's keeping you warm.
I want to add something too for the condensation that happens on your sleeping bag, because we all wake up and it's all frosty and in your face, and nobody likes that, right? I recommend a frost bib. Can just some sort of soft, comfy material. It could be fleece. It could be a large merino wool, square bandana of some sort, but just something you just tuck it into your collar or throw it over your sleeping bag, so it just covers this whole region on top of your bag. In the morning, all of your frozen breath will be there. So you take it outside your tent, shake it, and then all that moisture is gone. Or you can dry it by your stove or whatever, but it keeps it up from, just making your sleeping bag all crusty and frozen by your face.
No, that's great. I've never done that. I'm going to try that. Yeah. So what's the best material for that, do you think?
Well, if it's nylon, it's going to freeze that, pretty quick. I've used just a piece of a fleece throw, and I've
Nice.
got a merino wool bandana that I've used in the past. In fact, I started using those in hammocks. I'd hang it from a ridgeline. I saw this from a YouTube video years ago, but I tie one corner, clip it to my ridgeline, and then I like snap it around. It was basically like a bib, but it would just
Right.
up in front of your face to catch all your breath, and it worked really well. In the morning, I just shake it off, and all that moisture is gone.
That's a great idea. Thanks for that tip, Nick.
So-
I'll use that one because I'm a hammock camper, right? So, well, not in the wintertime so much, but
Yeah. But yeah, just have something just tucked into your collar, just draped over your top of your bag there. Your face will be more comfortable in the morning. Yeah.
All right.
I'm
Thanks.
going to announce this early because we're about 5 minutes before 9 o'clock here, and I think we're probably going to get in about 15 minutes of overtime just because we got a little bit of a late start with the Kevin Callan concert with Jerry Vanderveer. If anybody happened to miss that at the beginning, you got to go back and check that out. But I'd like to touch on food a little bit. What types of foods we should be eating. But before we get to that, just to let everybody know, I posted earlier here that we're going to get some rapid fire questions in. If you have a question, put the word question before it, and I'm just going to mark it here with a star. And then the last 5 or 10 minutes of the show, we're just going to bang off some quick questions and answers that you're looking for. Food ideas. What type of food should we be eating when we're out there? Obviously, we're burning a ton of calories trying to stay warm, trying to get firewood, trying to set up tents, the whole 9 yards. What are some good high calorie eats for the backcountry?
Fat. Lots of fatty food.
Yeah.
I
Now,
just
Martin, you don't count because you got a weird diet, dude.
Yeah, I have a weird diet. I am carnivore adjacent. I eat an awful lot of meat and an awful lot of fat. But nothing will get your. I mean, pound for pound, right? For by volume, there's nothing more calorically rich than fat, right? And sugar is great too for that. So I try not to eat too much sugar, but I always bring molasses cookies. I make my own molasses cookies with a lot of molasses. They don't freeze hard. It doesn't matter how cold it gets. I can always bite into them, and they're always soft. And I keep them right next to me at night. If I wake up and I've got a slight chill, I'll drink some warm water out of a thermos, and I'll eat a couple of cookies, and then boom, off to sleep I go. It puts me right under. I get that little sugar rush in the middle of the night does wonders for me. But I eat a lot of fatty foods.
I just smoked 125 pounds of pork this past couple days in prep for upcoming winter trips. And tomorrow I'll be doing about 40 quarts of chili. And when I do the chili, a lot of it will be done on my smoker with the beef suspended above the pot to smoke and drip to catch all that goodness. Yeah, so Martin nailed it there, and I see a lot of comments too. I'm all about high calorie snacks, high calorie meals. One of my favorites is French toast when I'm camping, but in the winter I'll make it with pound cake. I don't know where that's coming from. Yeah, I'll do French toast with pound cake, and we'll throw on whatever we can, sausages and things, to get a nice hearty start to the day. Some people have trouble with a lot of sugar. I get heartburn if I'm snacking on candy bars and sweet stuff all day, like cider, if I'm being really, doing strenuous stuff. So I'm more of a meat, cheese kind of guy, and some people do the, salty nuts and M&Ms and candy.
I like the trail mix idea in the back, or like in the wintertime, because nuts provide a slow calorie burn, right? So it takes a while to digest, especially before you go to bed. But some nice pepperettes or something before you're going to bed, because if you eat a lot before you go to bed too, you're going to your body's going to work like a furnace to digest that food, right? So, what's the matter, Christina?
I'm just, if I ate that before I went to bed, oh my God, I get an ulcer or something. Crazy acid reflux. I don't know how much food you're touching on. I love to make good food in the hot tent, especially. And a note, if you're going winter camping for the first time or you're new to it, pre-cook as much as you can. Cooking is not the same in the winter as it is in the summer. You're, oh yeah, I gotta go bring a steak and we're gonna make it on the fire, and things are very different. Everything takes longer. Your eggs will freeze if you do not insulate them or keep them in a cooler with a hot Nalgene, or, you know, in your sleeping bag, or whatever, you know, whatever kind of camping you're doing. You've got to think about keeping your water from freezing. You've got to think about keeping your food from freezing, and just make everything as simple as possible. Pre-cook everything, just heat it up, you know, get fancier as you get along and, you know, move along and get more experience. But when you start out, just make everything super simple. Pre-cook your bacon at home, like do everything you can before you go, because it'll just make your trip so much easier. It takes longer for your fuel to heat up. It takes longer for everything to do in the winter. So
to add on to what Christina's saying there, years ago, and I still do this, I'll make like a omelet at home with all the things I want in my omelets, fully cooked, throw it in a Ziploc bag. I'm always either melting snow or boiling water from a lake. I can drop that freezer Ziploc bag with my pre-made, already cooked. I don't care if it freezes omelet. I can drop it right in hot water in the morning, and I've got a hot omelet that's fully cooked, ready to go. Sausage is pre-cooked. If you're going to bring cheese, if it's block cheese, cut it in advance. Butter, pre-cut the butter. If you're doing potatoes, throw in the microwave before your trip. Potatoes. Potatoes. Even in the summertime, potatoes they never
cook. I always end up slicing them. I'm like, okay, then they're going to be sliced.
Cook like everything else. Just always pre-cook the potatoes, and better yet, mashed potatoes, instant mashed potatoes. Great for winter camping. Just, you know, this much dry potato makes this much finished product. It's just, yeah, like she said, just pre-make stuff, and so it's just easy to reheat. It's a great way to go, and especially the freezer Ziploc bags hold up really well with boiling water, better than like Saran wrap or other types of bags. You don't want it melting, falling apart in your pot.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Nate,
what do you say? We take some. Want to get some rapid fire questions here? And where are we? We're going to start from one that come really early on from Tim over at Super Good Camping. He's asking, will this 3-season tent stand up to weight of snow if it's wet?
The difference, I believe, well, Nate should probably take this one because you're the equipment guy.
Yeah, that's
fiberglass aluminum poles, I would think.
But yeah, generally speaking, in like a dome shape, I don't know. I know of people where they'll have like a load of snow drop off of, break a pole. Just generally speaking, your 3-season tent isn't designed to take on a load of heavy wet snow. If it's dispersed just from a snowfall and it's sliding off the sides of your tent, I'm sure you're probably okay. But I have heard of, like, you know, a giant hunk of snow sliding off of a tree branch and snapping your pole, and that's not great. But yeah, I mean, if it's just, the other thing too is if I guess if it's set up well and it's just, you know, snowing, generally speaking, it's just going to slide off of your tent and build up along the base. But yeah, I mean, there are those instances where it's just not designed to take a huge lump of snow falling from a height and onto the top of your tent. A little different than summer.
I wanted to add, I was on the phone with a Canadian outfitter recently who has, they do guided trips and they rent out canvas wall tents. And they were saying, so where I live, we don't get typically 2 feet of snow, and I don't get these heavy wet drops quite so much. But they were saying that even some of our favorite brands for the really sort of high-end canvas wall tents, they are replacing the poles every year or two because of, you know, having a tent set up for more than a couple nights. If they do get a heavy dump, they're actually bending some of the poles of our bigger tents. So that was something that I didn't expect. So that's why even if you have a large canvas tent, they sometimes will sell tarps for those as well. And I guess that helps a lot with just helping shed that snow. But yeah, even some of those tents that use bigger poles can be susceptible to heavy snow loads too.
Cool. Nylon or canvas for a hot tent?
Canvas.
Nylon. You want me to tell you why? I'm going to tell you why I got a nylon tent this year.
Because you like
Canvas tent, 3 canvas tents, homemade, painter's drop cloth. They've been great. 6 years. Winter here for me, the last few years is not winter anymore. I went to Niagara for Christmas last year. I came home, I had snow up to my doorknob. The next day it poured rain the whole entire day. So I was going out all the time, and I was finding that I was scared because there's so much mixed precipitation. There's so many days now in the winter where it's raining, freezing rain, and my tent was getting wet. I know a lot of the brand name ones, the snow trekkers and stuff, they're more water resistant. Mine's just sprayed. I think they're probably better for that time, like for that weather, but mine has just been getting wet, and then it freezes, and then you've got to bring it out, and it's heavy and it's wet. It's dripping on me. So that's part of why I went with the nylon, because the winters have been so just terrible. And shoulder season right now, like I just went out last weekend before this, mixed precipitation the whole time I was out. So I was in there and I was like, yeah, I don't have to worry about stuff dripping on me, condensation, but not from outside. So
For the most part, too, a nylon tent's going to be probably a little more cost effective than a high end nylon or canvas tent.
Yes.
Snow trekkers, you're looking into thousands of dollars. Eskers, $1,500. You can find value ones on Amazon. Those big bell type of tents, things like that.
yeah,
I've
my
got a
nylon
couple
one
of
was
canvas
400,
tents.
I believe.
Yeah, I've got a couple of canvas tents. I have one of those, and you might be able to relate, Nick, one of those one tigress hammock. It's like a hammock hot tent, right?
Yeah.
And there again, condensation issues, but there again, I don't use it very often either. So it's part of the arsenal. So I would say with any style tent that you get, just test it out, use it. Utilize it in the backyard. Get to learn what it does, its characteristics, because they all behave differently, right? Even one nylon tent versus another nylon tent, the shape is going to make a difference. Where your stove jack is situated, where your stove is situated. The size of the tent. These are all variables that you have to consider when it comes to this type of thing.
Yeah, I would definitely prefer the canvas, but it just hasn't been working for me the last few years, especially. It's been so wet. So I'm still going to use the other canvas tent, but I'd like to see what the nylon does. And I want to feel safe. I'm out there by myself, and then it's pouring rain for 4 hours. And I wake up in the night and I've got water dripping on my head. That's not cool. Like, I don't want that. So,
Ripples and leaves. What do you do with your ash buildup in a hot tent wood stove?
I deal with it in the morning when I'm taking the stove apart. I mean, if you're in the same spot for a couple nights, I usually just try to let it burn down, as low as possible. I mean, I guess you could bring a scoop, but yeah, generally speaking, if it builds up that much where you need to get rid of it and you're in the same spot for a couple nights, let it go out, let it cool down. Put on your leather gloves that you should have with you when you're putting your stove together and taking it apart. Take it outside, give it a good shake, bring it back inside, and away you go. Unless you're gonna bring a little metal scoop shovel or something, then if you're moving every day, then generally speaking, it's dealt with when you move, or you can do it on the daily as needed once you let it burn down and cool down.
You can use a pot lid too. You've got one that'll
pot lid, or like a turkey pan, one of those cheap tinfoil.
Yeah, anything metalish.
Yeah, in my experience, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was coming at you.
No. In my experience, if you try to empty your stove while you're in your tent in the middle of a trip, you're just going to get ash everywhere. It's really, really hard. You got to be very, very careful, very, very gentle, very, very slow and methodical. So echoing what Nate said, I wait until it's time to actually move. I just let the ash build up. In fact, having a nice bed of ashes in the stove, I find actually helps the stove perform better. So I don't mind it accumulating. I mean, unless it's getting to such a point that if I open the door, ash is going to spill out, I don't worry about it, right? And in which case I just kind of push it. I just spread it around away from the door to the back and the sides. So I find an ash bed actually helps the performance of the stove. So I only empty it at the end of the trip usually. And so, wait for the stove to cool, as he said, use your leather gloves, transport it outside. I'll just dig a little hole or stomp a little hole in the snow. I'll make sure that I am upwind, because when the ashes come out, it's going to come right at you if you happen to be downwind, and then you're covered in ash, and then there's no getting it off, right? That's all there is to it. It's not hard at all.
Mm-hmm. Cool. This is like we'll do this because there's two similar questions. Steve Bentley's asking, what type of cooking stoves do you recommend for winter camping? And Tim is asking specific fuels to cook with in the wintertime. So we can cover both with one question.
White gas, I think that's my go-to. It's very reliable. So I know some people that will use alcohol stoves even in extreme cold. You got to pre-warm the alcohol. Some of the other canister style stoves, they'll start to lose their functionality when it gets really cold. So I would say white gas is for me.
Yeah. And
I use alcohol.
Like an MSR stove or like a nice Primus type of stove.
Yeah.
Or a Coleman, one of the old Coleman fuel.
It's not using a wood stove.
Style. Yeah.
Yeah. When I'm cold tenting in an igloo, I'm sort of in a snow shelter. It doesn't breathe very well. There's a vent hole. So I can't be using something that's going to put out a lot of dangerous fumes. So I use a Trangia stove with alcohol with methyl hydrate. And that works fine. I'm never cooking, for so long in there that I'm worried about a serious buildup of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, or anything like that. And of course, when I'm hot tenting, I have a wood stove, right? And of course, if possible, if the weather permits, if it's not really windy and cold or something like that, I'll just cook outside. I'll make a little fire. But if I want to cook breakfast in my igloo, for instance, when I wake up in the morning, I want to make my coffee. I want to, fry up some bacon and stuff like that. I'll do all of that on a Trangia stove, and that works just fine. The BTU output is not great, so it's not as calorically dense as white gas, so it takes longer to cook. So there's no question it's slower, but I'm usually not in a hurry. So.
Can alcohol be utilized in like say a MSR Whisper Light International? Like that's a multi-fuel system.
I don't know. I've never done it. Nick, do you know?
I've burned Everclear and things like that in there. I haven't tried the lower, grades of like rubbing alcohol or anything, but I've tried some of that stuff and it's worked okay.
I see an experiment in Dennis's future. Have to try that out.
I just use my summer stove, backcountry. Same thing I use. I just try to keep the fuel warm. Or the wood stove, of course, in the hot tent. It's great for cooking on.
Or a twig stove works wonderful too. If you
twig stove works, right? But not in a snow shelter.
Not in a snow shelter, for sure.
It's a bit smoky in there.
JD's wondering, what about number 2 in the wintertime? Tips and tricks for pooping in the backcountry in the wintertime. Anybody?
Keep your feet pointed, pigeon-toed. If you got snowshoes on, just keep the feet pointed in. Especially
make the latrine ahead of time.
If you're using rented snowshoes, especially, point those toes in.
Make the latrine ahead of time. Don't wait until you have the urge to go and find a spot. I do that anyway. Whenever I go camping, I always make sure that the latrine is done. And I usually go in the mornings, but I make sure the latrine is done the night before. I don't want to be fussing with that in the morning when I have an urge. That's not the time.
And what about disposal of your toilet paper? Because it still will not disappear in the wintertime. You should burn that stuff, perhaps. Carry it out.
Yeah.
Or never pack it out.
Yeah.
And mark your spot after you burn it. Obviously, if you're covering it with snow, there's a bit of a story with that 9-day trip we did last year. Shortly after the Lure of the North folks went through. And they were very, very happy that we had already blazed a trail through the route, even though it was not of traditional snowshoe width, unfortunately. But not only that, we had tamped down some snow for some tents. but it's more than likely that we may have left some landmines around the area that I'm not sure if anybody found any, but it was a pretty large group, and so the odds are when you have that many people within the same area looking for the same type of spot, that someone's going to come across something.
Right.
Oh,
A
dear.
big Jim Baird-sized dookie, eh? Yeah.
It's frozen. It's not such a big
Jim,
deal.
but-
It's
Yeah,
frozen. It's not such a big deal. It's not so offensive.
Sooner or later, it's going to unfreeze.
It will.
Use some branches and make an X if you're in sort of a busier area. Something to signal that that's somewhere where someone may not want to step their snowshoe down into.
Yeah. Martin, this one's for you. Walt B, he's obviously seen past episodes of the Winter Camping Special. Can you explain the theory of dressing to ride the cool edge? Because this is something that's pretty important to talk about too.
Okay. So riding the cool edge, I don't know if I originated that expression or I heard it somewhere, but so the idea is you never want to actually be warm in your clothing when you're outside. One of the things that happens is people drive to their location, they've got their winter clothes on, they get out, and they're already fully warm, like actually warm. And then they get out and they find it really cold and they start snowshoeing or whatever they're doing. And they get sweaty as a result, right? Because they're wearing too many layers, right? Starting off too warm. So the thing to keep in mind is that you want your body to be not cold, but not warm. You want to be riding that line, that cool, that edge between cool and cold, right? You want to be on the cool side, not on the cold side, but you're still riding that line. And that means layering appropriately and wearing clothes that breathe so that you don't accumulate sweat and get uncomfortable that way. And it helps to have baggy clothes. So the principle is this: when you go out on a hot summer day, you walk out of a building that's air conditioned on a hot summer day, and you feel that wall of heat. You feel the heat immediately, but you don't sweat instantly, right? It takes a few minutes before your body starts to produce sweat. And that's because your body can't turn off the systems of shunting blood and stuff like that. It can't start the process of evaporative cooling to cool you down until it has suffered the heat and it knows, oh, something's up. We have to do something about this. That takes time. Your body must experience it, and it will be unpleasant. You have to suffer the heat before you will start sweating. And it's the same thing with the cold. Your body will not fire up your metabolic furnace and start burning extra calories to keep you warm until it suffers the cold. So I always tell people, look, when you're going to your location where you're going to go camping or snowshoeing or whatever you're doing, don't overdress. Don't wear all the layers in the car that you're going to be wearing there. Or if you're in the car, don't crank up the heat so that it's as warm as it is inside your living room. Turn the heat down as you go. Let yourself acclimate to the cold. And when you get outside, finally, put on as little clothes as you can stand. Okay? And you might be uncomfortable. You're going to feel cold. Okay? If you have Raynaud's or something like that, make sure that your extremities, your hands especially, are well covered and stuff like that. Make sure your feet are properly attired. But don't wear all of your layers. You don't want to be comfortable. You want to be a little uncomfortable. And then your body will suffer the cold. And then it'll say, oh, we need to do something about this. It fires up that metabolic furnace. You start to warm up. And everyone's experienced this. You go out in the cold, and it's freezing cold, and then you're out doing stuff. And next thing you know, you're taking the hat off, you're taking the scarf off, you're taking the mitts off. Now, why is that, right? It's because your body at some point started to experience the cold, usually just on your face. And it starts to warm you up. And that's assuming you're not exerting yourself and not just getting sweaty from exertion. So the idea of riding the cool edge is just trust in your body's adaptive response. Your body is a machine that is supposed to regulate your body temperature in response to the temperature around you. And so you have to let yourself suffer that. But that means that you have to have the right kind of clothes. You have to have clothes that breathe. You should have many layers that you can take on and off. You should have a pack or a sled or a toboggan on which you can toss off your layers so that you're not just wearing lots of layers and then you can't take them off because you got no place to put them. And if your layers are loose, that's better because that allows them to breathe. If you're wearing loose garments, except for your base layer, which is always going to be right up against your skin. But if you're wearing loose garments and you move around and there's moisture and sweat inside coming off of you, every time you move, that creates like a pumping action. It's like a bellows, that close that sort of, pumps in and out, forces it, expresses all the moist air out. And that keeps you dry. So that's the idea of riding the cool edge. Just let yourself suffer the cold and let your body do most of the work so that you're not wearing all the layers that you need. And then when you stop and you become inactive and you're still somewhat sweaty and stuff like that, you have layers to put on, right? And you're not a sopping wet mess because you were wearing every layer that you have. So that's the principle.
Perfect. Yeah, makes total sense. I've always had that too. You get that pumping action, you can feel the air expressing out of there, right? So we're going to take one more last question, and we're going to wrap up for the evening. Question from Evan Lefebvre here asking, does anyone on the panel keep a CO2 detector in their tent?
No.
Does anybody worry about that in a hot tent?
I just got a new one because of the nylon. I was a little paranoid. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any harm in having it, except perhaps a false
didn't
sense
go
of
off,
security.
but yeah.
I think there's a risk of a false sense of security. Because most CO2 detectors will not work at low temperatures, right? And so I would worry that, I've got this device that's supposed to warn me, but it's not going to warn me precisely because it's not intended for outdoor temperatures. It's supposed to be used inside a heated home in winter. So that's what I worry about. So, but I understand that there are CO2 detectors that you can buy that have a big range, a big temperature range, including down into the lower temperatures. And if you get one of those, then it should work just fine. But I've never worried about it. But I don't run my stove at night, so I'm not worried about poisoning myself at night or anything like that. And it has to be said, there's no known cases of anyone poisoning themselves in the night in a hot tent because they were running their stove, right? So I'm more worried about fire damage or something. I'm not so much worried about smoke inhalation or anything like that. Although it's possible, I don't think anyone's ever expired that way. There's no record of that happening to anyone.
Yeah, just
people have died in tents though at night. People
you're
have
talking about a wood stove, not some random
yes.
heater
I'm
that's
talking about
Mr. Buddy or something like that. So
that's right. That's right.
You need to have one of these.
That's right. And there was a woman and her daughter. The mother died. The daughter survived. I think she was out in BC. They made a campfire. She'd taken a steel pot. She'd taken all the coals, put them in the pot, brought that into the tent with them at night. And that just vented off a whole bunch of carbon monoxide and other fumes. And the mother died in the night, and the daughter was unconscious. She was found unconscious in the tent. So you absolutely can poison yourself, from heat sources in a tent because they don't vent out those fumes. But canvas wall tents breathe really, really well. And if you don't run your stove at night, there's really nothing to worry about. So, and I don't run mine at night, so I've never bothered to get a CO2 or CO detector or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, you know what, y'all? I think we had a rather good show tonight. We learned a lot. A lot of the stuff we've covered in past episodes, but a lot of the stuff, everything holds water that we discussed tonight. So, you know what? Take it for what it is. Do your own research. But if you have the notion to try and gather some more information, check out Christina's course. It's very well put together. You can go back into past episodes of Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show. This is our 5th show, so we have 5 seasons of the winter camping special. You'll see some of these people over here all on the past episodes too, because they know their stuff. And that's why I invite them on to be on panel each year. So Christina, Nate, Nick, thank you very much for and Martin, sorry. I make it all the way around. But yeah, no, thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge and your Tuesday evening with us. And it's been great having you all on.
Thank you for having us. I just wanted to quickly mention Friday midnight is the deadline for the giveaway, and I've already got 3 emails. So if you're interested, send me an email.
Awesome. You want to give them all one more little blurb about that? I'll put your email address up here once again. There it is. So Christina's giving away her a couple of
online
courses for her online courses for winter camping for beginners.
Camping for beginners.
Yep. So if you're interested, drop Christina an email telling her why you would like to take the course, and she'll pick some winners. And you have until Friday, so enjoy. Thanks for doing that, Christina.
No
Nate,
problem.
any closing statements?
Don't forget your Reflectex. I reflect text there. Anyways, yeah, get out there and enjoy the winter. There's a lot of quotes about, if you don't enjoy the snow, there'll still be snow, and you won't have any fun. So you might as well. That's a horrible paraphrase, but you know what? You might as well get out there and enjoy it and make the most of it. It's not going anywhere. It's part of where we live, and you can make it as fun as you're willing to with a little bit of effort and a bit of creativity.
Well said.
Well said. Nick, any last words?
Yeah, just take what everybody offered tonight, and give it a shot. Stay warm out there. I know I've got a lot of university students watching this. I told them they had to, and there's folks signed up for my upcoming winter workshop that are tuned in as well. And if anybody wants to reach out, they can contact me, shoot me an email anytime. info@nowoutdoors.org. Happy to help, regardless if you're coming on a trip with me or not. I'm happy to help you get out there. So,
yeah, is that my alpaca hat you're holding there in your hand?
Yeah, it's there we go. Yeah, actually we got buffs now too. We got some buffs we're trying out this winter, so be all nice. And so today was frigid. I think today was the coldest day we've had here. So I finally got to bust this out, and
it feels like you need to be doing this on your way.
Yeah, man. And how about you, Martin? What would you like to close the show with?
Yeah, get out there. Just what Nate said. Get out there. We live in a wintry country here in Canada, and the northern United States. It's plenty wintry. Get out there and make the most of it. There's lots of people who have lots of information, lots of knowledge that you can ask. There's lots of Facebook groups. There's now Nick's organization offers amazing courses. I've had feedback from people who've taken courses and they had nothing but wonderful things to say. I myself offer a winter hot tenting course and igloo building and igloo camping courses. So if anyone's interested in that, they can look up Yours Outdoors, or they can contact me directly. But yeah, just get out there and give it a try. Backyard camping, if you've never done it, is not that hard. It doesn't have to be your backyard, as Christina said, or was it Nick? I can't remember. Somebody said, a neighbor's yard will do just as well. Okay.
Just be safe.
Yep. Awesome. We'll see you all in the green room as I close up the show here. Thanks again, you all, for piping in tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Awesome.
All righty. Well, hopefully everybody enjoyed tonight's show and learned a little bit. You know what? Next week, we've got a really cool show. We're going to be featuring Hap Wilson. And it's not going to be the typical political talk that we like to talk about with Hap. We're actually going to be talking about Hap's books and Hap's artwork. So we're going to be going through kind of the history of all his publications. And we're also going to be talking to him about some of his art, because Hap Wilson is quite the artist and photographer. So you might want to tune in next Tuesday evening, as Hap Wilson will be our guest. Also, as we enter into December, we're gearing up for our Christmas giveaway that we will be doing the show before Christmas, obviously. So stay tuned for that, and we'll have all kinds of information coming down the line for that as well. We're going to be giving away some really cool things for this holiday season. And if you want to be a part of it, you have to basically tune into the show. If you haven't already done so, please do smash that thumbs up. And maybe if you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Interesting fact, I have 53% of my viewers are not subscribed to the channel. Why is that? Come on, hit that subscribe button, and you'll always be notified as to what's coming up with the show. Anyways, everybody have yourselves a great week. Go on back, check out some past episodes of our winter camping specials from previous seasons. You can find it in our playlist of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show on our channel. And that's about all for that. So anyways, everybody have a great week. And remember, please do keep the adventures alive. Cheers, everybody.